throughout Pinellas County. So thank you all very, very much. I hope I didn't go too long on what I have to say, but it's a pleasure and an honor to accept the recognition. Thank you.
Extend this to you in recognition of your dedicated service to Forward Pinellas, March 12th, 2012 through November of 2018. Go ahead and applause now. I'm sorry.
We'd like to bring up Commissioner Charlie Justice, who had an all too brief tenure on our board, but we really enjoyed your presence over the last year, at least since I've been here. And we'll miss you, but look forward to your guidance as a Board of County Commissioner member. So thank you again for your service.
Yeah, and I was talking to Charlie about his tenure on the MPO, and he had one early on when he first got on the commission, and then a year and a half ago, and both times kind of substituting or pinch hitting for Commissioner John Maroney, who we all obviously remember and love deeply. And I know that Commissioner Long is working really hard for an event this Saturday honoring John and his family. But you were a pinch hitter for him, and it was a tough time, an emotional time for our commission. I really appreciate you stepping up in the middle of the year and doing that. So it's a big deal. And Charlie's just a first-rate guy. He has a little funny sense of humor sometimes. It keeps us all on our toes on the commission, but really just a class guy and really good for this board and good for the Board of County Commissioners. So thank you, Charlie, for all that you do.
Thank you. Those are so much nicer words than you say back in the hall. So, no, I appreciate the opportunity, and certainly we are all elected and serve the county in different ways, and having the opportunity to work with great leaders from around the community, where I don't get to always see you all the time, but on these kind of boards we get to work together, and that part was a great pleasure. And the issues are important, but I also took an extra responsibility filling in for John. That made it a little bit more special. That made the mantle a little heavier, and made me give it a little bit more reverence and respect than any other position, so I appreciate that. And working with Mr. Blanton and his staff has been great. I mean, I've lived here my entire life, but Mr. Blanton has taught me a lot of things about planning and transportation. He's still trying to convince me of a few others, and we're working on those. But it was a great pleasure to work with you all, and I look forward to continuing my service in another role. Thank you very much.
The agenda online? Should be, yeah. No. Are you? Send an email. Search for your emails.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My staff, I don't want to forget them.
Told me.
Yeah. Okay, so first I'd like to bring up Brett Burks of our staff and recognize Brett. This is really an enjoyable thing to do, because normally I'm up here recognizing people who are about to retire or are retiring, and that seems how it's gone lately. But Brett, you've been here 3 years now, and you all don't typically see Brett a lot, but he is the analysis behind the messaging and a lot of the data and the work that we've done, everything from public health and transportation and urban agriculture and other aspects of how we get around our community, how we grow, how we develop. Brett has been a real asset in terms of his geographic information system skills, but he's really a planner. He's not a data guy. He is a top-notch planner, and we've really enjoyed your presence here, so thank you very much. I know, I'm putting you on the spot, so.
Well, thank you. It's been a great ride, hopefully many more years. And yeah, my birthday's on Friday, so it's a good, good present.
Good birthday present, all right. You want to say?
Yeah, just, come on up here, we got to get a picture. But also, just on behalf of the board that are sitting here, thank you for everything you're doing. 3 years late, but welcome to the county, and for all that you're doing. It's a big lift right now. We've got a lot of work going on in the county, so thank you for what you're doing, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
He's really cute. No, I don't think he is. I don't think he's gay. You think he's gay? I just like to know because
So I'd like to just recognize Sarah Caper of our staff. Sarah has been with us for quite a few years now, and she's really blossomed as a principal planner, emerging project manager. She's going to be leading some big efforts for us in the next year, and I just have total confidence in Sarah and her ability to get things done. And the transportation funding workshop that we had a few weeks ago, I really just want to single Sarah out. A lot of people contributed, but nobody like Sarah. She worried the details. She coordinated with our partners, and I've heard a lot of good feedback, and I feel like it went off about as well as it could go. Getting 50 or 60 elected officials in a room is never easy to talk about transportation funding and raising revenue and all those kinds of things. But you did a great job, and not just on that, it's been consistently good work ever since I've been here and gotten to know you. And a little known fact is that I was a reference for Sarah in her job in Manatee County when you applied to be a transit planner in Manatee County. And then when I was being interviewed for this job, I didn't know you worked here. And then I realized it, and I said, oh, that's great. I'm even more excited to come here, knowing that we have this kind of quality talent working for us. So thank you so much.
Again, on behalf of the board, thank you for what you're doing. You really have, over the last few years, and I've been involved with the MPO for a while, you've really continued to grow in your knowledge, your leadership, and we really appreciate it. And the revenue conference, it almost puts people to sleep when you say it, revenue conference, but you kept us all awake, kept us all going. I thought it was a really productive meeting, so thank you for making that happen. Appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. And I will say, so I think planning that workshop was more work than planning my wedding was. It was definitely a lot. Well, I hired a planner for that. But
There you
definitely, yeah. But no, I really appreciate everything, and working here has been really great, and I look forward to continuing.
Well, thank you for 5 years of service. Amazing how all the emails are really red, but none of them know.
All right, we have the consent agenda coming up, and let's see. Yep. We have 4 things on that consent agenda: approval of the minutes of January 9th, 2019 meeting, approval of committee appointments, acceptance of Q1 financial report, and the approval of the minutes of the transportation funding and coordination workshop. I will say under the committee appointments that I think we have one from Pinellas Park or Mid-County to fill, and other than that, our advisory committee is full. We're getting a lot of good people, and getting that fully functioning. So I'm really excited about that. So anybody in mid-Pinellas County or Pinellas Park, please, if you're interested, let us know. Do I have a motion for that, please?
Excuse me. Approve. Could I have the record reflect that I did attend that meeting for the minutes?
Oh, it shows you were absent?
It doesn't show me at all.
Well, that's
And remember, too.
well, we'll make that change.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we had a motion by, okay, got it, and a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
Last meeting.
Let me get straightened out here. Good grief. All right, we've got some public hearings coming up. We've got one sub-threshold. Oh, hold on. Did I get everything right? Yeah, okay. We have 3 hearings, 1 sub-threshold and 2 regular countywide plan amendment hearings. So just let me go over the procedures real quick. It just take a second. And we're going to be doing both on the Pinellas Planning Council side. And we will hear all the sub-threshold case. We have one first, and we'll ask each one, in this case, 1 vote. We'll ask the Forward Pinellas staff to present the items, and then any of the applicant local governments desiring to do so can address their item. If necessary, we'll call upon a representative of the Planners Advisory Committee to provide the PAC comments. Once these reports are given, I'll ask for people in favor of and people against, and then finally any other citizens who wish to comment on the issue. And then finally, we'll hear rebuttal by the applicant if necessary, and a staff response or summary. And then the board will take questions, and then we'll vote, and then we'll do the same thing for the regular cases after that. So let's go with our sub-threshold case.
Okay. We have a presentation starting off Rodney Chapman.
Good afternoon, Rodney Chapman, Planning Manager for Pinellas. As the chairman mentioned, we have 3 land use cases for your consideration this afternoon. And the first is a sub-threshold case within the city of St. Petersburg. It is case CW 19-02. And the city of St. Petersburg seeks to amend the countywide plan map of 4 parcels from recreation open space to residential low medium. And the purpose of this amendment is to create 4 single-family home sites within the St. Petersburg Country Club. And you see the location of the general area in the map to the right. The 4 parcels are identified in yellow on the map to the right. In total, they are about 4.1 acres in size. The existing uses are locations along Fairway number 9, 10, and 18. And you see the surrounding uses are a mix of recreational uses, there are residential neighborhoods, and there's a preservation area off to the right. The current countywide plan map category is a recreation open space. You see the list of permitted uses there in the middle bullet. There are no residential allowances within the recreation open space category. The maximum floor area ratio for non-residential development in this area is a 0.25 FAR. The proposal is to amend the designations of those properties to residential low medium. You see the list of permitted uses, which are a mix of residential, as well as its community gardens, office uses, some commercial, and utility and institutional uses are permitted. The density standard for the residential low-medium category is up to 10 units per acre. We have evaluated the city's request and determined that it is appropriate for this location given the purpose and the locational characteristics for the residential low-medium category. And on balance, we determined that this case is consistent with the relevant countywide considerations that we're recommending approval.
Okay.
Any
Yes.
questions?
I have a question. Do we have St. Pete representatives
Yes,
here
we
today?
do.
Yeah.
Maybe the question's better for them. It's more specific. I live about 2 blocks from here and have for about 25 years. And that's been a hot topic in our neighborhood association, and we're supportive. And I know we've got a lot of golf courses that we talk about, but this is one that's coexisted with the neighborhood for a long time. Further west, a few years ago, 4 or 5 units were converted in this fashion. In fact, my aide built a new house on one of them. And so I can see how that actually works, and it helps deal with some of the issues that the St. Pete Country Club is dealing with. So my question really is on the overhead, if we can go to the satellite overhead. You know, it's going to remain a golf course, as I understand it. But along Fairway, that long rectangle, I'm just wondering how many units are we talking about along Fairway and for the other parcels as well? How many units?
Sure. Good afternoon, Derek Kilborn, City of St. Petersburg. I believe you're referring to what we call Area D, which is the long rectangle
The longest one
on the
on
east
Fairway.
portion.
Uh-huh.
So that would accommodate no more than 8 single-family homes.
8, okay. And what about the others?
Area A, which is the top left elbow shape polygon, that would accommodate a maximum of 6 single-family units. And then those 2 parcels in the middle, the one Area B would accommodate no more than 2.
That's
The smaller one?
2,
Yes.
3, that's
And
4.
then the other one would accommodate no more than 4.
Maybe.
So combined among the 4 parcels, there could be no more than a maximum of 20
Okay.
single-family units.
Do you know if there are plans to convert parcels in the future, or is this the extent of the transformation of parcels? You know, there were 4 or 5 a
Correct.
few years ago, now we've got
Right.
20. Are they planning to do this in the
There,
future? Or?
there has been no discussion about future
Okay.
requests. We do have a representative here for the applicant who applied to the city for these map changes, and perhaps that individual could speak to that question.
Okay. And the last question on the elbow shape, that is actually elevated, and I don't want to get into site planning, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, there you go.
Is
You're
it going to
starting to
remain
get close.
elevated? I mean, it would kind of be towering down, or are they planning to make it more street level?
That I don't know. They are going to have minimum drainage requirements to comply with. And it's those types of details that when I answer your question and say we know from an area perspective they can build no more than 6. But when you start to get into that level of detail on site plan, it may be some number less than that because they have to accommodate elevation concerns and other details that we can't see at this point in the process.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Councilman Rice, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that when this project was first presented, the long rectangular area along Fairway, it was originally presented more along Country Clubway South, directly across from Boyd Hill. And that particular part got a lot of controversy. So then they brought it back with a change to move it to the Fairway side, and that change was looked at very positively by the organizations that had been opposed to it, and we had really discussed this at length at the council level. So I'll be happy to move approval.
Okay, hold on. The City of St. Pete, did you have any other presentation that you wanted to make?
No, I had 2 points to make in our
Yep.
presentation. One I was asked about, and Councilmember Rice just gave you the other. So
Okay, thank you.
We encourage your approval of the application.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Is somebody from Packard, did they look at this, any issues?
The PAC reviewed the application and recommended approval unanimously.
Thank you. And any proponents in the audience that would like to speak to this? Please identify yourself and.
My name is Don Mastry. My address is 200 Central Avenue, and I represent the St. Petersburg Country Club. I agree with all of the comments made by the commissioners, and I have a brief presentation, but I don't think it would add much. I'm willing to answer any questions that you have with respect to development. Right now, this does not grant the right to build the 20 homes. We're in the process of platting the property, and we'd have to go through site plan approval, and that's where it will determine what can go on the site.
Okay. Well, if you have a chance to rebut any comments that are being made in a
I
few
have
minutes,
not
so-
heard any comments that I would
So
rebut.
if you need to do that, we'll bring you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else, any other proponents? Anybody against the project that would like to speak? Anybody else? Okay. And if you have no other comments yourself, and yourself, Rodney, you all done?
No other comments.
Okay. Any other questions by members?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. So Councilmember Rice made the motion, and, okay, got it. Any other questions? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
The next case is CW 19-03. This is a regular countywide plan map amendment within the city of Largo. This request is seeking to amend the designation of property from residential low medium and retail and services to retail and services. And the purpose of this amendment is for an existing automobile dealership that wishes to add additional space for vehicle storage. And you see the general area of the amendment within mid-Pinellas County as indicated on the map to the right. The location is generally at the intersection of Roosevelt Boulevard and US Highway 19. The property is a little less than 2.5 acres in size. It is vacant. It is surrounded by a mix of uses, including mini storage warehouse to the west, residential to the east. There's a stormwater pond to the north, and the existing automobile dealership is to the south. The existing plan categories, as you can see from the map, are two categories. They're residential low medium and retail and services. You see the list of permitted uses under the residential low medium category, and they're obviously consistent with the previous case in terms of a mix of residential uses, office and transportation, utility, and other various uses, and a density under that category does not exceed 10 units per acre. The proposed category is retail and services, and it is indicated on the map.
Sorry about that.
Your time is up.
I'll speed it up. Would bring the entire property under one land use plan category being retail and services. You see the uses listed there, which include office, retail, commercial, residential, and various uses. The density and intensity standards for this plan category are up to 24 units per acre for residential and 0.55 flow ratio for non-residential uses. We have reviewed this application and determined that the plan category is appropriate for the intended purpose and meets the locational characteristics for this plan category, and determined that it does meet the balancing criteria contained in the countywide plan, and recommend approval.
Okay. Thank you, Rodney. Is anybody from the city of Largo here that wanted to speak to this?
Good afternoon.
Hi
I'm
there.
Katrina Luna Gordon, City of Largo.
Welcome.
I definitely agree with Rodney. Thank you so much for the analysis. And we do move for approval if so be it.
Thank you.
And also, the applicant is also in the audience if you have any other questions as well.
Okay. Thank you. Katie, did you have anything?
Good afternoon. Nothing to add. I represent the applicant, CarMax, and happy to give you the history of this. At the city level, we went through a lot of history with respect to the annexation and how this inconsistency occurred with how the site plans. So happy to present that if you need it, but otherwise reserve time.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right, thank you. Any proponents on this that would like to speak? Any opponents? Anybody that would like to speak to this item? All right, you have some rebuttal time, but no need, I guess. And you're good?
Yes.
All right, any questions from the board? Hold on. One sec. Yes, Mayor Bugowski.
I just wanted to look at Michael. Any issues on your end?
I asked about the retention pond and the history and everything.
And the people that live behind there, if it's residential, I don't know if this is just a parking lot or a big 3-story building. It doesn't, what their plan is, but.
It was just
If you're good with it, I'm good with it. I'm just asking.
No, based on the applicant, the plan is to extend the vehicle storage from the south into the proposed commercial general area.
Covered storage, I guess is what it is.
Vehicle storage.
Yeah, but it's covered. Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I think I heard a motion to approve. Second, did you get that? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
The last land use case for your consideration is CW 19-4, again, another amendment within the city of Largo. This amendment seeks to change the designation of property from resort, recreation open space, and there's also an area that has no designation. I'll walk you through that in the subsequent slides. And the purpose of this amendment is to bring an existing legally non-conforming use on the property into conformance with the local land use plan. And you see the general location of the subject property in the map to the right. The location of the property is 1300 Cove K Drive. It's also known as the Cove K Marina. See the limits of the property on the map boundary outlined in yellow. The property is a little less than 5 acres. It has various existing uses associated, most commonly found with a marina. And the uses surrounding the property, since it is waterfront, include some environmentally sensitive areas. There are some areas of preservation. There is also residential development and a golf course to the east and south. The current countywide plan map category, there, as you can see from the map, the western portion is designated as resort. The eastern portion is recreation open space, and you see that body of water that comes into the property that is submerged and that has no designation on the countywide plan map. Permitted uses, as with the previous case for recreation open space, are very limited, and the maximum floor area ratio is 0.25. The city proposed to amend the property by, as indicated in the map to the right, whereby the entire parcel would be designated as resort, including the upland and submerged areas. Under the resort category, there are a mix of residential, temporary lodging, and other uses that are permitted on that plan category, with the residential density not to exceed 30 units per acre or a 1.2 floor area ratio. In our review of this request, we felt that we could not support the amendment as proposed, so the countywide rules have a process that is described as an alternative compromise. And we consulted with Pinellas County as an adjacent jurisdiction, as well as the city of Largo, on the development of an alternative compromise that more accurately reflects the conditions on the property and maintains and preserves some of those environmentally sensitive and submerged areas. So what you see here on the map to the right is the alternative compromise amendment, where the submerged areas would remain as undesignated as they currently are on the countywide plan map, and the remaining balance of the property or the upland areas would be amended to resort, and that amendment would be about 3.8 acres. We did transmit this alternative compromise to the city of Largo for their consideration, their staff, and their staff did concur with the alternative compromise. This process, if the board approves it, will take a slightly different form. We've had a couple of these in the past since I've been here at Fort Pinellas, and the process requires that this body take an action, a recommended action. It will then be considered by the city of Largo for endorsement of this alternative compromise. We will then re-advertise and then schedule it for the next available countywide planning authority public hearing. So in conclusion, we've determined that this alternative compromise is consistent with the purpose and locational characteristics of that plan category. It does recognize the environmentally sensitive areas of the subject property, and we've evaluated it against the balancing criteria and determined that this is appropriate, and we're recommending approval. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
So it was the environmental issues that made it
Yes.
Hard for you to.
Not to go back too far, but under the old countywide plan, there was a category actually called water. So even though you would have a piece of property that you owned, if it had a naturally occurring body of water on it, it would be designated as water on the map. But with the development of the new countywide plan, the collapsing of categories, we removed the water designation. And so now when you have that situation occur, it just remains as no designation.
Yes.
So in the future going forward, any of these kind of projects that come forward, will we let the cities know so this doesn't occur again?
Yes, we had a pretty robust discussion at the Planners Advisory Committee and drove home that fact, is to just improve the communication on the front end when you have these sort of cases so that we don't have to go through this extra step in the way the amendment is advertised and acted upon.
Thank you. Any other questions for Rodney? City of Largo. Anything?
This was an interesting one because this is a city-driven future land use map amendment per the annexation in 2014. We did not have commercial recreation land use classification at the time. And then upon amending our code, we have the commercial recreation, and now we're able to come forward with this map amendment.
Okay, so you're good with the...
Yes, and I do acknowledge the acreage difference, and we will bring that to our city commission at the next second reading meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any questions for her? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any proponents here that would like to come forward? Any opponents? Anybody that would like to speak to this at all? Okay, seeing none, I suppose no further comments on your... Any other comments or discussion or motion?
Make the motion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second, okay.
I actually think Susie wanted to second it.
Okay, did you want a second?
Sure.
Well, Susie will second. Thank you, Mayor.
No problem.
Okay, yes.
So we're approving this, but it's going to go to Largo and then come back. Is that correct?
Go back to the Countywide Planning Authority.
Okay.
So we're done with
County
it.
Commission.
I got you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, now we're going to move into presentations and actions, and PSTA, Janet Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, there's some really important factoids I want to share with all of you from this month's report. And that although we are required to operate within a balanced budget, PSTA projects its budget out 5 years based on various cost and revenue assumptions. Based on these assumptions, PSTA's current adopted 5-year operating budget includes deficits beginning in this year. Over the past 10 years, PSTA's 5-year operating budget has consistently shown budget deficits at some point in the 5-year period. However, we have been able to find savings, make efficiency changes to routes, or have received grants to offset those projected deficits. Staff was hopeful that additional savings could be found to eliminate the projected FYI 2019 deficit without having to cut service. However, it does not appear additional savings can be realized to offset the deficit. We are operating as efficiently as we can, but the board has authorized the staff to hold public hearings on bus and paratransit service cuts to some lower performing routes and paratransit service. A public hearing on proposed service cuts is tentatively scheduled for the evening of April 10th, 2019 at the PSTA offices. Our legislative agenda is very heavily focused on new and additional funding for transit services, including FDOT support of regional service operations and transportation disadvantaged programs. Additionally, we are very carefully watching House Bill 385, which could change how future sales tax proceeds are used for transportation, specifically restricting them to capital expenditures only, and not allowing for expanded service operations. This could be very detrimental to long-term transit vision and regional competitiveness of Pinellas County. On a really positive, good note, our new electric bus service continues to run very effectively in downtown St. Petersburg and has had, since October, an 80% increase over previous months. FDOT is releasing a design build project in late spring to harden and expand the shoulders to 12 feet wide use by buses, and that's to advance our BRT concept from downtown St. Pete to Gandy Boulevard. Buses will be able to travel on the shoulders at no more than 15 miles per hour above the speed of general traffic when general traffic speeds fall below 35 miles per hour. And our next board meeting is on February 27th at 9 a.m.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for her on PSTA? Nope. All right, tell us about T-BARDA.
T-BARDA. Okay, just hold on one second. What did I do with my paperwork? Here we go. T-BARDA. Gosh, we're working on so many different things at T-BARDA. It's hard to know which piece to highlight first, but our governing board approved a resolution in allowing our employees to participate in the Florida retirement system, which they had never done before. So slowly but surely, we're becoming a very real transit agency. The T-BARDA Governing Board also approved a telework policy and procedure, which allows some of our T-BARDA employees to do work from wherever they might be, at home or on the road or in a satellite location. I don't like that on the road part, because that makes me a little nervous. But the T-BARDA Governing Board approved the First Amendment to the procurement policy and guidelines to allow the executive director signing authority for purchases up to $50,000. We approved a three-year base term contract with 2 one-year options to Tyndale Oliver, not to exceed 5 years or $600,000 on our auditing plan. The services approved that's the same thing. Okay, excuse me, Natalie King from RSA Consulting provided board members with a list of state legislative updates that could potentially impact T-BARDA, and I have all of those available for you if you're interested, but that House Bill 385, as it is for PSTA, is probably very problematic for us. So hopefully we can all get on the same. Whit's shaking his head, so he knows. Yeah. And Sean Sullivan for the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council made his presentation on the Tampa Bay Resiliency Coalition effort that I think all of you have heard me talk about ad infinitum for the last year. We continue to push the new initiative to bring our business community on board so that we are really creating a resiliency plan, not only in our region, but hopefully statewide. And that's the end of my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Seal, did you have anything that you want to add to it? Anybody have any questions for Commissioner Long?
Seal, did I leave out anything?
No, it was fairly innocuous meeting.
Okay. Innocuous.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate those updates. Yes.
Commissioner Long, with PSTA, it's come to our attention, a couple members have, in our city, the trash bins are not being removed and they're filling up quite high and overfilling. Can you have your staff from PSTA look into that?
The trash bins?
Yeah, they're kind of, exceeding the limit of height, fullness. That's the way to put it.
They're overflowing.
Yes. So, if you can have your staff, a couple of our commissioners have brought it to the attention of somebody else.
Okay, I will make that a point.
Actually, you were hiding back there. There she is. Okay. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Sandra got it.
Sandra, yeah.
Sandra.
She's back there.
She's paying attention.
Yes, she was. She waved a minute ago, so.
Well, I also want to share, it wasn't on my report, but Brad and staff have been meeting with those 5 cities that are not part of our ad valorem revenue stream. And interestingly enough, you know, our buses do go through those cities to provide service to the next city beyond them. So I look for that to come back at some level. I don't know if it will come here, Whit, or if you've had any of those conversations with Brad. But that happened as a result of a resolution that was put in place in the 1970s. I think that we can all agree that from 1970 until today, the world is a much different place, and that it's time to really take a look at that again as we move forward. So you'll be hearing more about that from me as the year goes by. Too late to do anything about it this year, but I venture to say it'll be high on our list come next fall.
Good. Okay, thank you. Anybody, any other questions?
Well, just.
Karen's looking at me funny.
Oh, no, I was just thinking of, well, because it'd have to be a local bill.
It has to be an amendment to the
The
local
local bill.
bill, correct. Which is why I said it's too late to do anything this year, but
Well, to that point, Mr. Chairman, you know, if, we've been talking about that for a long time.
I know, we have.
So we have a legislative committee. The county has a legislative platform. If we want to.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
The legislature is aware of it, that needs to be changed. I think we all ought to talk about that and have it in our platform.
I
Else it's
agree.
not gonna
Also, the millage level.
Yeah.
That's why I built, that's
You're
why.
going to open it up, you might as well talk about the millage.
I agree with that one. For sure. Both of them, really, both of them.
Well,
They
yeah.
both need to be
I
discussed.
do think that message was heard pretty clear at our funding workshop, so we will continue to work with PSTA and provide whatever support we can.
Well, I'm pushing a little harder than that, though. I'm saying if we
Yeah.
want that to be changed, I think it needs to be in each of our legislative platforms, or at least we ought to talk about whether that'll be in our platforms when we talk to the legislature. Because the last time we talked about this, I think it was Senator Jones, it was that long ago.
Well, he's the one that put the resolution in
Well,
place.
so-
And he's not here anymore as a sitting member of the Senate. And things have changed a lot since he lived in Treasure Island.
In an all-hands-on-deck approach, this is a piece that we need to include. So-
I couldn't agree with you more, because fair is fair, and it's not fair to the other cities.
Well, I think Kennett City, if I'm remembering right.
There's 5 of them.
I know, but Kennett City, you literally walk across the street.
Yeah.
And there's your service, so.
Correct.
And isn't it over $1 million of revenue? That's
No, it's
what-
about
4 or 5, yeah.
It's like 4.
Just for those cities. And then if you can raise the millage rate, you can get even more, but to be capped at 0.75 for a county of 1 million people for their transit service?
But it's not just county anymore. We go over to Hillsborough and we go down
No,
to
I know.
Manatee. So, I
Saying
mean,
it's just- it's
this
crazy.
is a big, wide conversation, and I bring it up just because I've been on PSTA since I've been a county commissioner, and we were talking about it then, and we're still talking. I think in all the other transit boards that I have participated in, we have moved beyond the talking stage and are taking action. And so now it's time that we all take action and row in the same direction. My opinion, whatever it's worth.
Thank you, Commissioner Long.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, we're going to go on to the Regional Household Travel Survey, and Michelle Lee from FDOT. There she is. Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
So I don't take up too much of your time. I've got copies of the presentation and then copies of the press release for the travel survey.
Thank you.
There should be a presentation. There we go. Okay, excellent. So thank you for having me today. I'm here to give you just a little bit of information about the Regional Household Travel Survey that is being sponsored by FDOT and the 5 regional, or 5 counties that are here on your screen, and the regional planning agencies.
I am the project director on the consultant team for this project that is now underway. So I'm just going to, I want to make you all aware of the survey program, so if anybody in your agencies or your constituents have questions about it, so you're aware of the survey, give you a little bit of progress to date and explain how you can help us get more survey data that will help with planning in Pinellas County. So the survey is being conducted in 2018 and 2019. We're already in the field. The program itself right now consists of a household travel survey, which is asking all participants or all household members to participate in the survey. We're also targeting areas that have high incidence of seasonal residents in the same survey, and then some of our larger universities in the region that we would consider to be special generators. And we'll do a follow-on survey starting in May for long-distance travel, so people that are traveling from outside the 5-county area to capture that data as well. The information that the survey collects is household demographics, where people travel, so origin and destination of all their travel, travel mode and trip purpose. So for example, we ask taxi or Uber or Lyft because there's lots of disruption in transportation these days, and then also trip replacement behaviors. So we probably all order things to our house now instead of going out to pick them up, and so we get that information as well. The survey helps with updating transportation models and to support planning, so both the activity-based and 4-step models in the 5-county area that is comprised of FDOT District 7. The data will be provided to Pinellas County, Forward Pinellas, and then all the other regional counties for their transportation planning. We offer the survey both through downloading a smartphone app to an iPhone or an Android. We also are doing intercept and email recruitment, and we're offering raffle and direct incentives. So you'll see here on the postcard that you have, anybody who completes the survey can be entered into a raffle for an Amazon gift card. The sampling strategy is twofold. We do address-based, or what's called probability sampling, by sending mailed invitations to households throughout the region. That way we can be sure that we have a good geographic and demographic distribution across the region. We're also reaching out, as I said, through email and direct intercept and social media. The goal is to collect a minimum of 3,000 and up to 6,000 households, and as I said, it'll provide data for the updating the models. We do have a survey website. From here, you can enter the password that is on the postcard here or on the website, TAMBTRAV, to access the web-based survey. That same password, if you download the smartphone app, can be used to participate in the survey as well. We've sent 40,000 mailings thus far, and through the end of March, we will send another 150,000 mailings region-wide. We've also distributed well over 5,000 postcards so far. We're also targeting homeowners associations and asking them to spread the word for us. We've sent 5,000 emails and anticipate sending 10,000 to 15,000 more emails region-wide. We have had some press coverage. There is a press release in your packet, as well as an example that was issued by FDOT and then posted by the metropolitan planning organizations on our behalf. We've had some social media traction, and both Bay News 9 and the ABC local affiliate have done stories on the survey in the last 2 weeks. So far, we've got almost 1,500 households that have recruited into the survey and over 4,100 persons. There's a lag time for completes because what we do is assign a travel date in the future that is a Monday or a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday are the focus days because that's the most typical travel. So far, we've collected almost 6,300 trips. And then we're just asking for you to have the knowledge of the survey, to take the survey because you are in the region. Invite your networks or publicize the survey if you're willing to do so. And then we recommend you share, or you can just share your contacts with us and we can reach out to them. But what's most important to us is that Pinellas County is well represented in this survey as such a dynamic and changing region. It's been many years since you've had robust actual travel behavior data that's reported by households. You've got some data that have been reported about how they feel about transportation, like do you like bike paths more than other things, or bike share good. But as far as how people actually move within the region, there's a high demand for having that information, and that's what we're collecting. My contact information is on your materials. It's also on the last slide here. I'm the project director. You can contact me or Orion Welling, who's the project manager, and any ideas or help you can provide, we appreciate it.
Michelle, thank you. Well, you said the goal was to provide data needed to update the travel models, and then you said it's travel behavior data, right?
That's correct.
So I have a dear friend of mine, Jim Harpham, who I know Mayor Bujalski knows from Dunedin, who was involved in transit quite a bit, had a lot of questions, and very persuasive in many ways, but certainly wanted to get his thoughts. And he always talked about this component missing in a lot of our conversations, so that you could really understand where people were coming from and where they were going and why.
Right.
So I know we are having a memorial service for him this weekend, but I know he's probably looking down saying, yes, that's kind of what I was looking for. But really, I think this is important to try to understand some of that movement and why we're doing it and when we're doing it and where we're going from and to. So
Right.
appreciate the
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, we'll collect data from as many households as possible, and process that data, and really the more the better, in order to get a representative sample of the region. So anything that you all can do to help spread the word, we would appreciate it.
Good.
We're happy to help in any way we can.
Hold on one sec. Commissioner Long.
Mr. Chair, yes, as chair of this board and Commissioner Seal as chair of our county commission board, it occurs to me that it might be a good vehicle to ask our communications team to put this out, and because we have a vast network of citizens throughout the county that our communications folks works with, and it's just one more way of getting the news out there.
That would be excellent. We are working with the FDOT-D7 communications team, the Forward Pinellas communications team. I printed out copies of the email and the press release, and then some talking points as well. Those are also available for download through a promotion pack. And we're very close to having a couple of short videos available that can be also distributed through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, things like that.
And then many of us, if I might, Mr. Chair, follow up, many of us are involved in a lot of public speaking requests that we get. We could also add that into our little...
And we can provide materials for that. I also have a number of additional of these postcards here, so if anybody would like to take some of those with you, I can hand them out, and we can get more if that would be helpful as well.
Sounds good.
Good.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm done. Thank
Chair
you.
Welch?
Thank you for being here. Just a constructive, not criticism, but just a point that you may have already considered. But I noticed your web interface is very mobile friendly, so you could take it right on your phone. I'm wondering why you're asking. When I see download an app, it kind of slows me down because I don't want to download an app unnecessarily. So why did y'all focus on downloading if it's already mobile friendly?
That's a great question. Because when you download the app, we collect data for 5 travel days rather than just one. Once you download the app, it's not very burdensome to answer the questions, and because there's so much more day-to-day variability in travel patterns now than there were even a few years ago with work-from-home options and other things. So that is why.
Great answer.
The app also prompts you. So as you travel around, you'll get a prompt saying, how did you make this trip?
I'm trying to go on
Yeah.
an app diet. Try not to.
Among other
That
How many
answers
apps
the
do you
question.
have anyway? Because you probably have more than
Let's
anybody.
not even go there. I'm going to do the Marie Kondo method on my apps.
Commissioner.
I was curious, how long does it take the typical person to do the survey?
It's a 2-part survey, so the first part it depends on your household size, but it takes roughly 5 to 7 minutes to fill out the basic demographic information that customizes the survey for you. So it'll ask for initials of the people in your household, so we can get vehicle occupancy, how many people traveled with you. And then it depends on, like for the one-day survey for a one-day household to report travel, takes a little less than 10 minutes if you do it on the web. We've done a lot of research. People actually report that it's less burdensome to do it on the app because it reflects a map back to you and then just asks you a couple of questions. Where the web-based survey, you have to actually enter in, I went from here and then I went from there, and then it shows on the map. So.
Councilman Holman?
Just a question. I'm on your website right now, and kind of almost to Commissioner Welch's point. So because I share so much with constituents on social media, I would love to be able to share this on my social media page, but if I just use your link, it's going to take them right into the survey online. I would rather them do the app so that it is better information. Is there a way that you can make your homepage talk more about the app and how to utilize that so that can be shared?
It's a great point, and you are correct that when you go in, it takes you right to the web survey.
Yeah.
It asks you just those few basic demographic questions, and then it gives you the opportunity to download the app there.
Got it.
And so one of the questions that it asks is if you have iPhone or Android.
Okay.
And so there is the option to go that direction as well.
Perfect. So if we go ahead and direct people to the website, it will eventually get them to the app.
It will.
Perfect.
But that's a good point. We may be able to enhance the front page and say you can go right here to download the app rather than
Perfect.
go
All
through
right.
the other way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner Seal, who can she get a hold of, do you think, to talk to our communications folks? Your office?
Yep.
Be great. If you
Okay.
could, then maybe we can plug you into communications here at the county.
That would be excellent. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate
Yep,
it.
thanks. Okay. Chelsea, here she comes, raring to go. She'll give us an update on the Advantage Pinellas plan. Welcome.
Hello. Good morning, afternoon, whatever it is. All right, so for your monthly update on Advantage Pinellas, we're going to be very brief today. We just kind of want to walk you through some of the activities we've had going on and what we have coming up in the next couple of months. We've been working on these three big things here on the screen, refinements to our population and employment forecasts, public outreach, and then what we're calling our needs plan. So just to kind of remind you, we had those surveys, the statistically valid one of the public this past year, and we had a few key takeaways. And these key takeaways are really going to help us shape what projects we select to put in the long-range plan, or what we're calling Advantage Pinellas. The first one was that Pinellas County residents want a safe and efficient transportation system. People want better timed lights, and more than half of participants were willing to exchange lower speeds for safer streets. So that's very important as we decide what projects we advance for funding, and that point right there will actually be very important in our next presentation. We start talking about safety performance measures and targets. The second key takeaway was that people wanted easy access from their neighborhoods to their destinations. People did not want a very long commute, and more than 85% of people believe that frequent and reliable transit improves the area's economic value. So our residents really do see the value in transit in Pinellas County. And the third was that the biggest barriers to transit are reliability, frequency, and efficiency. And this is something that we saw over and over again. If we had better transit service, operating more frequently, longer hours, people would definitely be more willing to ride it. In addition to that statistically valid, we had that It's Time Tampa Bay outreach this past year, the online MetroQuest survey. We had really great results for that, and we spent a lot of time comparing that to the statistically valid survey, and there was a lot of overlap. We saw very consistent results, so it was a really good outcome to be able to know that we could use the results of both of these survey efforts as we move forward with the long-range plan. We've been doing a lot of public outreach. This list here at the top, those are all events that we've been to just in the past couple of months. The last two, we have those coming up. We'll be participating in the Heritage Village Folk Festival next weekend, and also we've had an invitation from USF St. Pete to come to one of their events with all their students. So we're out there, we're talking to people about what their priorities are for transportation, how they want us to invest their tax dollars in transportation improvements, and this will all lead up to, again, that final selection of projects that we include in the plan. We've started to do some targeted presentations to homeowners associations and community groups, and we're right now beginning to reach out to those underserved communities to make sure that we're talking to everyone countywide. And we are also looking at doing a little bit more online engagement in the next couple of months. We'll take that ball game that we're using to kind of prioritize by mode, and we're going to put that online so we can get that out to more people and get more people weighing in on what modes they think their tax dollars should be invested in as we develop the needs plan. We did commit to a series of 3 focus groups. We had one last December where we did a deeper dive into those survey results, and we also got some really good quotes that we can use as we develop the final plan. And we're targeting May for that second focus group. And we'll be working with them on, we'll have some projects available from our draft needs plan for them to react to and comment on, and that'll really help us prioritize the projects that will then match up against the available resources for transportation improvements. So this map right here, this is a very draft, but this shows kind of our regional needs. What we do is we say, okay, between now and 2045, what projects do we need for the region? And this is where we throw kind of everything possible under the sun, and we say, all right, we know that we need these for mobility in the next 20 to 25 years. Then we kind of take a step back and we say, okay, well, this is how much money we have. And so that's when we start aligning the resources with the projects, and that'll be the development of the cost feasible plan, and that'll be coming in the June, July timeframe for your review and input. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I would just like to add one thing, just to clarify a little bit about the needs plan. It's not a list of everything under the sun. I just want to clarify that a little bit. We are trying to be real strategic about what the needs in Pinellas County are. And really, you know, if you talk to 2 different people and look at the same road, there might be 2 different needs there. So it's really a balancing act of what's appropriate for the corridor, what can we accommodate in the corridor, and you'll hear more of that a little bit later in the Alt US 19 corridor presentation, where that balancing act is really being played out in real time. But I just did want to clarify that the needs plan is not a catch-all for anybody's project that they ever thought of. It is based on data, it is based on analysis, and it is based on some trade-offs that we are going to present to you when we get to that point. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and that plan to be voted on finally, when would that happen? That'd be
So the needs plan will be generally May, June timeframe for approval by this board, and then the financially feasible plan would be generally around September. Prior to it, we adopt in November, but we will give you an opportunity to preview that at least by September. And that's really where we allocate future revenues to which projects we really think we can financially achieve.
And that's really, isn't that that's the first plan that we've done, a combination of land use?
It is the first
transportation.
First plan adopted, to be adopted as an integrated land use and transportation planning agency, correct?
So I think that's really significant. So I think it's going to be significant for planning transportation projects for us here going forward. So I look forward to the coming year and all of our chances to weigh in. Any other questions on this item? Yes.
You said you're still looking for comments and do the neighborhood associations and reach out. I'm active, and I know a lot of people that are active in the Kratom community. Would you be willing to, if I gave them your information, reach out to them? They have a big
Absolutely,
youth
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any and all ideas that any of the board members have for us to present, please just let us know. We'll be happy to make the time to go out there.
And I'll reinforce that. Anything where we can get in front of people who are younger would be great, because a lot of the projects in this plan are going to be 20 to 25 years out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilman Gabbard?
I just want to give Chelsea a shout out to that point. I put her in touch with my largest HOA in my area, and within a day she was booked on their calendar. So she definitely will come out and she'll get with them very quickly. So thank you for that. I wanted to thank you.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, I couldn't pull up the presentation. On the last slide, I think it was a CSX, was a dotted line.
Yes.
What are we saying about that?
We're identifying that as a future transit need for the region.
And can we pull that up, because that went over
Yep, there it is.
through Oldsmar?
Yes, goes over through Oldsmar, and there's actually a spur that goes down towards Tampa International Airport, and then the spur that goes over to the USF area.
Okay, so that's just keeping it in the mix?
Correct.
Basically, okay.
That's probably one that, at least right now, I don't see the potential of putting that in our financially feasible plan. You know, you would need the legislature to act on that and direct the Florida Department of Transportation to enter into negotiations with CSX to purchase that, and we're a ways. That's not going to happen this year.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to the safety performance measures and targets. Chelsea.
this may look a little bit familiar to you. Just as a reminder, these are performance measures and targets that we first set past January, and we update them every year. As new data becomes available, we take a step back and we look at the trends for those safety performance measures, and we also reevaluate our progress towards meeting the targets that we set. These 5 that are up here on your screen, these are the performance measures that we currently have that are related to safety. We look at number of fatalities and serious injuries, fatality and serious injury rates, and then we also look at a combination of fatalities and serious injuries for non-motorized transportation, so our bicyclists and our pedestrians. Clicker doesn't work. There we go. So the way the process is, in about August of each year, the Florida Department of Transportation comes out and they set their own target for these safety measures. And then each of the MPOs has the ability to either reinforce the statewide target or set our own. Back in August, DOT declared all 5 safety targets to be set at 0. This is very similar to what they did the year before. When I brought this to this board last year, the decision was made that while 0 is an excellent aspirational goal that we should all strive to attain, it's not really that likely that it's going to happen in the next 2 years. So this board took action to set a somewhat aspirational target for each of the 5 measures while working towards that vision of 0 deaths. So these are the 5 performance measures for safety. On the right-hand side, those are the targets that this board set last year, and it's a 2-year target. So for average annual fatalities, this board was targeting a 21% decrease, and you can see the numbers going on down. In the green right there, the percent change over 5 years, that's just showing in the last 5 years, that's the progress that we've made kind of in that direction. That's the direction that our numbers are going. These numbers were set right here by looking at a 2-year trend line from our current numbers, and then we looked at the lowest number for the past 5 years, and the percent difference in there was what was set. So staff is actually recommending that we take a similar approach. So this chart shows the average annual fatalities. Again, these are 5-year rolling average numbers to help account for years that might have some significant outliers. So the 2-year trend line would be 111 average annual fatalities. So if we look at the difference between that 111 and the 99, that's where we get the 10.8% decrease, and that would be staff's recommendation as a 2-year target to this board, very consistent with the methodology that was used last year. Our number of serious injuries has been on the decline. So again, we looked at the highest year and the lowest year and did the average. So we'd be looking at a 17.7% decrease for that. The fatality rate, since our fatalities have been going up, the rate has been going up as well. So we would be looking at a 10.7% decrease. And then the serious injury rate, again, as injuries are down, the rate's down. So we'd be recommending a 19.8% decrease on that one.
Kelsey,
yes.
On that, on the previous slide where the line's going up,
yes.
You talked about, no, the other one actually. You talked about it. Just show me how that's. Tell me how that's a decrease on the annual fatalities.
Oh, on fatalities?
Yeah.
Well, the fatalities are going up. We're recommending that we set a target for a decrease. We want to be targeting a decrease in our numbers. And what's important about that is the projects that we program in the Transportation Improvement Program, the 5-year work program, that's really our vehicle to make sure that we're meeting our targets. So by setting a lower target, it really encourages us to to program projects that will improve the safety of our transportation network. For the bicycle and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries, it's kind of been, a little up, a little down. It looks a little bit more pronounced on this chart right here because it starts at 208 and only goes to 222. It doesn't start at 0. But the trend line is 215. So what we did on this one, instead of taking that last year of the trend line, we really just took the percent difference between the highest and the lowest year to come up with a 1.7% decrease. So this is a staff recommendation. We took this to both the TCC and the CAC, and they both recommended approval, with one caveat. The TCC asked that in the future we consider motorcycle crashes and fatalities as well, since we have seen a pretty decent spike in those in recent years, and we commit to bringing that back to you at a future meeting. But for the fatalities, we're recommending that we target a 10.8% decrease, 17.7% decrease for serious injuries, 10.7 for rate of fatalities, 19.8 for rate of serious injuries, and then for number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, a 1.7% decrease. And people will always ask, how are we going to reach these numbers? Education and enforcement are 2 tools that we can use. But really the most important thing is in engineering and design. Our roadways are really designed to move vehicles very quickly. And few roadways have really great bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. So as we consider what projects we program for funding through our priority list, that's really going to be our vehicle to start reaching these targets that we're setting.
I'd also like to point out, I'm sorry, Commissioner, that the Department of Transportation is programming lighting projects and things like that. So lighting, design, all of these contribute. And really it's a speed issue because you have a lot more fatalities when cars are striking people or each other at 40, 45 miles an hour and up, and the fatality rate is much lower when those crashes occur at 20, 25, and 30 miles an hour. So when we bring complete streets projects to you, when we bring corridor plans to you, when we talk about mid-block crossings and flashing beacons and things like that, it's for a reason, to not only just comply with these targets, but to improve the safety of getting around in a place that should be much easier to get around on foot, on bicycle than it is today.
Commissioner Welch?
I was surprised when you said motorcycle fatalities aren't tracked. Is that?
Slow down.
Yeah.
We do track them. When we bring you, we call it our countywide trends and conditions report. That's when we do kind of a broader overview of crashes. But the TCC felt like this is probably also an appropriate time to address it as well, since we're talking about bicyclists and pedestrians. But we do track those numbers, just kind of with a different method.
Okay, and, well, maybe I can get with you on the side, because I'm still not understanding why we haven't been including that.
Well, for this right here, these are the performance targets that we're currently, the performance measures and targets that we're currently working towards. We just started establishing this within the last year, and we plan on expanding it in the future. So right now, it's just on these 5 measures regards to safety, but we do track and we do report on all crash trends on an annual basis.
So when I'm looking at now fatalities, serious injuries, that excludes motorcycles?
No, that is all. But we call out bicycles and pedestrians separately, but the TCC asked that we also separately call out motorcycles because of the severity. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Councilman Rice?
Thank you, Chair. In context of St. Petersburg's ML King Complete Streets project, I had a constituent push back on our safety studies and said, where are you getting this from? You could be comparing our urban environment to some desolate, Midwestern state to make it look like our numbers are high, but actually our numbers are high in an apples to apples comparison, even in comparison to, I think like Broward County is another densely populated county in Florida, and even in comparison to Broward, our numbers are way high.
Yes, absolutely. And you can tell that just based on the rates. When we compare rates amongst urbanized areas, we're consistently higher than most others.
So the rate is based on population. So it is comparing apples to apples of large urban counties.
Well, I remember when the secretary first started here, a couple years ago. Yeah. Wow. It just seems like you started more recent than that. But anyway, number one thing on his list was safety. And so it's nice having FDOT at the table with us on this. Not that they always aren't on that, but I think you pulled that out as a really important component of your efforts in the coming years at that time. We were at a meeting, when was it, a week ago or so, over in Orlando, and there was some discussion. Polk County had, because I'm thinking about this, we have a 2-year plan. I don't know how things are going to change. I mean, it just seems like, what are we going to do to energize change? And so we were over at a meeting, and Polk County came up with the kind of a pledge. What was it?
A pledge to drive slower.
A pledge to drive slower form, where it was actually they had a informational sheet, and at the bottom there was a place to sign. Of course, I said that to my wife, and she says, well, are you going to abide by your signature? And I said, I don't know, I'm going to try. But it was interesting, just the fact that we were having the conversation and talking about it, that people were making a personal commitment to slowing down, because obviously the slowing down, there's statistics that tell you if you slow down so much, it really saves lives. The severity of the accident goes way down. So I think we need to do something that's different than, what FDOT is going to be doing over the next year or two, what we're doing in education and getting out there, but something that's a little bit, I don't know, it sounded kind of fun to do, actually, and get our communities involved, to get our mayors and the cities involved, and just get a way to get people. I mean, it's not like we're going to, well, you signed this and you sped, so now you get twice the speed limit ticket. No, we're not doing that. But, just something where it gets people energized and involved. I think it would be fun, and it also draw attention to it, and maybe give us a chance to turn that curve, if nothing else. So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Commissioner Wall.
Is it speed or is it talking on the phone?
It's everything. Every crash is unique. Every fatality is different. It's a combination of factors. There's no one thing.
We have a lot of distracted driving crashes, that's for sure. We have, every factor comes into play, but ultimately speed is the one thing that gives you reaction time. So even if somebody is distracted, if they're driving really fast, they can't recover. So it's a combination, and sometimes based on the accidents reports, we see more than one of those factors at play. I want to really be careful about trying to chase our tail in looking at every, how do we deal with this problem? How do we deal with that problem? I think in general, if we're working on the 5 E's of enforcement, education, encouragement, engineering, all of those, it takes a comprehensive approach. It really does. I wish I could say there was one single factor that was driving all this. The Department of Transportation has done a great job of personalizing some of these fatalities, and you have that in your agenda packet. And these are real people, and they're not just spandex-clad bicyclists or some anonymous person out there. In fact, we had a presentation from the University of South Florida that to our technical committee and our bicycle pedestrian advisory committee that spoke to the way the media characterizes some of these crashes. That there is a depersonalization of car hits pedestrian, and it doesn't really hit home what that is, but these are husbands, fathers, wives, daughters. So it's a multifaceted, and I love the Polk County videos that they did. We would love to be able to replicate that here, and they've offered to let us build on that platform. So I think that it's a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, without question. Yeah. But I think it's, like you said, it's going to take all of it if we're going to start to change the direction we're heading in now. So, any other questions for Chelsea? Okay.
We have to take action on the targets.
So, everybody comfortable with the targets that have been set? That's what we're trying to do here today. So, if you have any questions on that issue, otherwise, I need a motion and a second for the targets, the measures and targets that have been presented.
Move approval.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Chelsea. Get that.
And I will let you know that we, once we set these targets and adopt them, we do need to adopt them into the TIP. So next month, you'll have a procedural amendment in front of you to make it official and adopt them into the TIP.
You'll bring that Polk County thing to us, I'm sure.
Well, we'll see what we can find.
Kidding. Thanks, Chelsea. Okay.
She's not going anywhere.
Oh, she's not going anywhere.
Sticking around.
We're going to talk complete streets and planning, and come on up, Rodney.
So I'm going to cover the Complete Streets portion of this. So just as a reminder about our Complete Streets program, this is the 3rd year that we have it. This is a competitive grant program where we offer up to $100,000 each year for concept planning projects and up to $1 million for construction projects. And really the intent of this program is to leverage our transportation funding to put in place those projects that are really going to bring about transformative land use change. We did receive 4 applications in this cycle, 2 for concept planning and 2 for construction. I'm going to bring back a recommendation for award to you next month, but I wanted to let you know what we did receive. City of Clearwater submitted a concept planning application for Fort Harrison Avenue. This is a 3-mile corridor all the way from Bel Air up to Pleasant, which is right where Alt 19 meets Fort Harrison. They've requested $50,000 and are committing to matching that with 50%. This links 3 activity centers. You have the hospital, the downtown, and the North Marina area. There's a lot of low vehicle ownership rates and underutilized properties along the corridor. And the corridor includes a trail crossing. The Pinellas Trail crosses through there, and also a lot of transit facilities. The City of St. Petersburg requested up to $100,000 to develop a concept plan for 18th Avenue South. They're really looking at some safety and operational modifications. There are minimal sidewalks in this area and also low vehicle ownership rates. There's a speeding issue in the area because the traffic volumes are not very high. There aren't a lot of stoplights, and they're seeing a lot of crashes along the corridor, so they want to come up with a concept to help resolve that. And also 17% of the parcels within a quarter mile of the roadway are vacant. So there's some redevelopment potential. The City of St. Pete also submitted an application for construction. This would be for 22nd Street South from about 5th Avenue South down to, I believe, 11th Avenue South. This is a top city priority. They requested the full $1 million to do this construction project. It does include a crossing of the Pinellas Trail at the northern end of the corridor, goes through the Warehouse Arts District and down through the Juices area. This would add some Island Street parking, bike lanes, and some streetscape enhancements while connecting 3 parks, and there's a big job center in that area right now as well. And the last application that we received was for the City of Dunedin for Skinner Boulevard. If you recall, last year we did award them $100,000 to develop a concept plan for the roadway, and now they're asking for the construction funding to implement that plan. It's about a half mile of roadway with a mix of land uses on either side, some redevelopment currently going on in the area, and there's a strong need for some multimodal accommodations. With the trail crossing, lots of lots of golf carts in the area, and some lower traffic volumes where something a little bit different can be done along the corridor. And this one also has some strong community support. So for the next steps on that, we did bring these projects to the TCC and the PAC for their review. We've assembled a subcommittee of members that did not submit applications, and they'll be meeting on this Friday to come up with a recommendation for funding that will be endorsed by the TCC later this month and brought back to you next month for your approval.
Any questions? Yes.
I looked at the different proposals, and I recognize this is kind of a newer program since I was formerly on the MPO. And I see a lot of the benefits, but I also am concerned about some of the potential results. The 22nd Street South?
Yeah, street,
Yes.
not avenue.
I think that is an ideal project. I'm just because I know of those properties and how they would be linked together. And it would be transformational. I mean, I don't know whether I should be making my comments now or later, but and with all due respect with Dunedin, and I know that intersection very well, I am concerned with the idea of putting the bulb outs, just because I've seen in downtown Clearwater when you go through their downtown and you have extra curves that people they don't navigate and they just run right over it. So I'm a bit concerned with the bulb outs, but I understand the safety considerations at Skinner greatly. And so, and then the City of Clearwater proposal going down Fort Harrison, that's already seems like a road diet because it takes 10 minutes to get through downtown Clearwater as it is to get through that intersection. So I can see where north of the Drew Street would be, they've already started to do that there as a road diet and the complete streets, but I am worried about people being able to transverse Fort Harrison in a timely manner.
I used to commute that route on my bike, and that trail crossing up there is
the trail crossing,
that's
I know.
a little hazardous.
It is a hazardous. I've done it.
Yeah.
So
And
I can
I
see
think,
where that.
I think what the planning grant would do, and again, whether we fund that one or not, would really identify what are the most viable types of strategies in there, what are the neighborhood support. So it's really meant to be, we're not going to go do a complete street initiative. It's really to look at what projects make the most sense there and then bring those back at the end of the planning effort.
I mean, they're all intriguing proposals.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed looking at them.
We're generally pleased with the quality of submission.
Have we implemented any of them yet?
We have. The first year, Chelsea, maybe you can speak to that, but we've programmed.
Has it been constructed?
Not constructed yet, but they're in the funding cycle for construction for both the St. Petersburg 34th Street South project and then the Oldsmar project.
St. Petersburg Drive in Oldsmar and Rosary Road in the
Rosary
city of
Road
Largo.
in Largo.
Rosary, okay.
I just want to mention the 18th Avenue South. I do know that road very well, and that there is, to navigate, could use some help, and also the businesses, there are businesses that are out. So to make that more viable, I really think that's a great project too. So I was glad to see somewhere that I'm way far away from the beaches, that I know that street very well. So I'm hoping that you will look at that one too.
And we'll be seeing this next month.
Yes,
Vote
correct.
on. Okay. Thank you.
So on the land use side, as you may recall, last year we instituted a pilot program that we called Planning and Placemaking. And really it was designed to be the land use component of essentially the Complete Streets grant that the MPO side of our agency institutes. So we tried to focus the purpose of the grant really on placemaking, and that placemaking can occur at various scales. We've gotten applications that have implications citywide, or more focused on an area, or more focused on a destination or a specific place. And as with all the applications, we've asked the local governments to focus on the implementation of the planning and urban design principles of the countywide plan strategies. As you know, the countywide plan is a 3-part document. And what we're trying to really do is focus on the creation of quality communities and foster that stronger sense of place, particularly in our activity centers that are most often our downtowns or our redevelopment areas. So we were able to increase the funding for the second year of the pilot program. Last year, we only had $50,000 available for the grant recipients. This year, we're able to take some of our planning funds and put towards this, so we now have $100,000 available. And so for this cycle, we did receive 4 applications. We received an application from the city of Largo, who is requesting $50,000 to develop a special area plan for that US 19 Roosevelt East Bay Drive area. It is a what we call a planned activity center on a transit-oriented land use vision map. So we did acknowledge that this area is in need of additional planning emphasis, and so we look forward to evaluating that one. We did also receive a request from the city of Oldsmar, who is requesting $25,000 to develop a feasibility study for a business incubator. They have titled it Tap of the Bay Innovation Center. It would be similar in concept to the St. Pete Greenhouse. They're looking at it as a means to catalyze redevelopment and business retention and attraction within their downtown. The third application is a request from the city of St. Petersburg, who is requesting $50,000 to update their downtown center streetscape standards. This is a fairly old document. I believe it was last updated back in the late 80s or early 90s, but it is something that the city has used to regulate the public frontage along various roadways within the community. And then lastly, the city of Tarpon Springs submitted a request for $50,000 to develop an economic profile of their sponge docks and community redevelopment area, as well as look at potential scenarios for highest and best use for a distressed property that the city took ownership of at the end of last year. So just like with the Complete Streets program, we will convene a subcommittee of our Planners Advisory Committee who will evaluate these applications versus the criteria that you see here, and make a recommendation back to the Planners Advisory Committee on March 4th. And then this board will take action and make a decision on the applications that will get funded at your March 13th meeting. And as with last year, you have the flexibility to partially fund project applications. Last year, we were able to split the funding between the St. Petersburg and the Pinellas County applications, and it seemed to work well. Any questions?
Any questions for Rodney? Yes, Councilwoman.
Question about that last comment that you made. Have we gotten feedback from those 2 award winners last year, if that really did work well for them, or?
It did, but what we learned is there needed to be a little more project development, I would say, because with the St. Pete missing middle lending analysis, the actual execution of that took a different form, and it ended up that we're probably going to be partnering with the Urban Land Institute on pulling that lending analysis together. It just took a while to get the mechanics and the machinery and the idea solidified so that the project could be executed. Pinellas County and their form-based code for the downtown Palm Harbor area had a few steps that were underway, and so this had to follow in after those steps were completed. So both of those projects are still in the process of being completed.
I guess my concern would just be if that would be our position again this year to kind of split that 100,000, and you've got one that's for 50 and one that's for 100,000.
Right.
How do you equitably split that so that both projects can be successful? Because if you split the money halfway, then City of Clearwater would get the full, and the other, City of St. Pete would only get half.
Right.
Is that really equitable? Does that really help both projects succeed? So that would be my only kind of concern or thought process about that.
Sure.
That'll be part of our vetting process.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about our legislative committee and.
Would you like me to take that one?
Yeah.
Okay. We have one action item for the board to consider, and in your agenda packet, you have draft legislative positions, and essentially it's a letter to our legislative delegation with some broad statements of policy principles and referencing some specific pieces of legislation. But we didn't want to really go down the rabbit hole of trying to chase legislation before the session even starts. So it's really a little bit broader in several areas. And the Legislative Committee met earlier this morning and had, I think, a very positive, productive conversation with representatives from the City of St. Petersburg and other agencies. Pinellas County representatives were there as well. And just the first item is the urban agriculture language. We have drafted some language in partnership with the City of St. Petersburg to encourage urban agriculture as part of urban redevelopment. It's an economic development strategy and a healthy community strategy. We have not been successful in finding a sponsor, and the deadline for sponsoring bills has passed. So this is now moving into, is there a moving piece of legislation that is similar? And there is a vegetable gardens bill that's moving forward that has been sponsored by a Deltona or DeLand representative. So that may be an opportunity, or it may be something that we look at for next legislative session. But the issue here is to amend the Right to Farm Act so that urban agriculture, that where the agriculture has kind of come to the city, as opposed to the city coming to the rural area, gives the city or county, as the case may be, some ability to put in some regulation in terms of noise and noxious odors and things like that for agriculture that goes into commercial production. We're not talking about backyard gardens like your collard greens or something like that. We're talking about something that you would bring to market. Generally speaking, it's gotten pretty broad support. The Florida Farm Bureau, I think there's a phone call on Friday to confirm their support, but they've been generally supportive so far. The thing with that is just finding a piece of legislation, and it may again need a sponsor next year. The other pieces of legislation deal with additional flexibility in transportation funding, indexing the fuel tax to the local option fuel tax to inflation, protecting trust funds, whether it be the Housing Trust Fund or the Transportation Trust Fund, stopping distracted driving in the case of handheld devices, maintaining MPO authority for apportionment, structure, and governance. Currently, there is a line in the state legislation that allows the state legislature to dictate MPO structures. Encouraging transportation mobility at the micro level, electric scooters, electric bikes, more on that in a moment. And then generally supporting home rule. And there are a number of references to that, from vacation rentals to the composition of MPOs to how you can spend your transportation surtax that Commissioner Long referenced. The committee had one change in the potential positions, and that was on the micro-mobility language. Generally, I think the committee and Our staff is supportive of things like electric scooters. We rode them in Indianapolis and had a great time. Or electric bikes and electric assist bikes are allowed on the Pinellas Trail today as long as they are under a certain speed limit. But the legislation that's been proposed would remove any ability of local governments to regulate electric scooters in any way. They would be allowed on sidewalks, on bike lanes, on streets. And the cities would also, or county, would not be able to go through a RFP process and select a vendor. You would have to allow anybody and everybody who wanted to come in and start setting up shop. So the language that the legislative committee approved would change that last sentence in your packet, which essentially would say these new micromobility options should be subject to appropriate and reasonable local regulations to ensure safety and compatibility with local conditions and procedures. So we kept it pretty broad. We encourage them and we want to see them happen, but proliferate may be too strong of a word, and we want to see them operate under the right context and conditions. And that's the only change the legislative committee had. So there's an action before you to either accept this or consider it with modifications.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on one second. Commissioner Bujalski,
I
or
was
Mayor
just gonna-
Bujalski,
I was
sorry.
just going to say, Commissioner Long brought something up a little while ago, and that wasn't, I don't know if that was discussed at your legislative. So I don't know if that is something that,
Regarding PSTA and the 5 communities, or regarding Senate Bill 385, because you mentioned both of those. Senate Bill 385 is legislation proposed that would limit the infrastructure surtax for transportation to only being transit capital and not operating. So you.
okay, and I don't know anything about that. I'm
That's-
talking about the cities.
Franny.
I'm talking about the cities and the millage.
Oh, that's not in our legislative platform for this session because it's
Right.
too late for bills to be filed, but that is certainly something that we would be happy to partner with PSTA and other
I think
entities.
it's really up to the county commission. I mean, are they going to ask about, put it in theirs? I just thought, if we're talking about it, it got brought up today that maybe we should add it this year, so I just didn't want us to skim over it without
Yeah, it's the
those
will
folks
of
having that dialogue.
this board.
Yes, Commissioner Long.
I'm struggling because the mayor was talking and forgot what I was going to ask you.
You want to come back to you?
Please.
Okay, Commissioner Welch?
Well, I often share your thoughts, so.
I mean, it
That you're
was
struggling
important.
or that?
I'm not, yeah, I'm always struggling. believe me.
No, I remember. Can I say?
I gave her the time. and
But
she-
I remembered, so
Commissioner
thank
Long,
you,
go ahead.
Commissioner Welch.
This happens to me all the time.
That
Can't do it.
last part of what you were just talking about with regard to the mobility and the scooters
Yeah.
and stuff like that, if they're going to take away our ability to regulate and have any authority over where these things go, then who picks up the liability when there's a huge issue?
It's a legitimate issue. I mean, that's the concern.
Thank you very much. I rest my case.
In fact, I think the St. Petersburg's legal position on this is if they can't have any regulation at all, we'd rather see the bill fail.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. Mayor Kreisman, that's, kind of the direction that he has given to his lobbying person is, fight for us to be able to regulate or don't fight for it at all, and hopefully, it'll pass and next year we can have a better bill.
I mean, both of us, the mayor and myself, have that background where we think about
Yeah.
those things. And I think for cities, especially the smaller municipalities, it's an enormous issue because, I mean, for those of us that went to Indianapolis, and, I mean, those streets and everything else are totally different from what we have here. And they are not prone to accepting smooth sailing scooters, lest they get out in the street and then you've got a nightmare.
So Tampa has a pilot project that's starting in April, as I understand it, and this would obviate some of their regulations, but I think they're limiting them to 8 miles an hour on the sidewalks, and they're limiting them to certain areas and restricting them from certain areas. And there's technology that allows you to be able to do that. I think that's a reasonable approach to at least a pilot to test these out, and then maybe you gradually expand their use over time if there's, as they get more, people get more familiar with them and expect them. But these are brand new in Florida, and there's only a couple of cities where this has begun to happen, Fort Lauderdale and I think Coral Gables. There's a city in Miami-Dade County. So they are coming, and we would be happy to work with our local government partners to develop a model ordinance if we have that ability at some point, so that there's uniformity among all 25 local governments. So I get what Senator Brandis and Representative Toledo are trying to foster, which is you don't want to have a hodgepodge of different regulations from community to community, but these are short-range devices generally. And frankly, a scooter that goes 20 miles an hour or more on a busy sidewalk like Central Avenue or even Cleveland Street up here or in downtown Dunedin would be a conflict potentially.
Yeah, and in Fort Lauderdale, I think I was telling the legislative committee that they've actually just talked about pulling them back, not allowing them to be used during spring break because of the obvious issues that when everybody descends there and having the rules that they have in place now. But it gets back to your point. They have the rules that are in place right now. They've made those rules that govern them. And so I think the ability to do that does make a difference by community. So, Commissioner?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up that the words that Quit just used, a hodgepodge, I mean, that's exactly what we have throughout our state. So as it relates to this issue, I find it pretty remarkable that they could be thinking that they could develop one set of rules that would apply to the whole dang state when you have urban and you have very, very rural, and those things just collide when you're talking about this particular issue. And it is not anything that I could support until we find out the issue about who's responsible for the liability piece, because it could be huge.
So we do have a recommendation from the committee before you, so.
Yeah. I had one quick comment.
Yep.
Speaking to Mayor Bujowski's question, in my mind, PSTA should make that determination if they want to make that ask for the other 5 communities. And if they do that, then I think we can consider supporting that, and then the Board of County Commissioners and any other cities could consider supporting that. But I really think, Madam Chair, PSTA should take the lead on that.
I agree, and we have got that high on our radar for next year. And while I understand the mayor's thought process, I also recognize who we're dealing with, and it would be kind of a wet exercise of futility to put it in there right now. Thank you, Mayor.
So any other comments on the recommendations from the?
Well, this is just for the future, since Whit brought it up. Is a scooter a motor vehicle? And since the chair mentioned spring break, is it a crime to ride a scooter when you've had a few drinks?
It's a crime to ride a bike.
Yeah, it is. You can't ride a bike drunk. You will get, it's a vehicle under Florida law, so yeah.
So it apply to scooters as well?
I think it would be.
Oh, yeah.
That's my sense of it. Yep.
Interesting.
That's the lawyer hat I just put on, so.
I'd like to see how you're going to enforce that. That's the biggest problem. How do you enforce it?
But these motorized vehicles, especially on our trail, it's starting to get more and more.
It's you county people that allow it.
Mr. Chair, what is it that we're approving or supposed to be
The
approving
recommendation is given to you in the 4 Pinellas policy positions, the 2 pages, with that one change under the encourage transportation mobility paragraph.
And I can read that again if you need me to.
What's that?
Yeah, please do, because somehow I don't.
Go ahead.
Let me read that again. So the last sentence would read, these new micromobility options should be subject to appropriate and reasonable local regulations to ensure safety and compatibility with local conditions and procedures.
And that's what you're asking us to approve?
That's the modified sentence, yes.
And the other 5 or 6 items that are on these 2 pages.
That's the only change the committee had.
Can we add in there the piece about the liability?
I think that's reflected in ensure safety, compatibility, and procedures, but if you want to see the word liability, we have no problem adding that in.
I think it's important.
We need a motion.
Put my insurance in.
Okay, well, Commissioner Seal was making the motion. Do you have an issue with putting the word liability after?
That's fine.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I didn't.
Pick any one of us.
There was a lot of seconds down here, so I didn't.
Care, they can
Well, I was
determine.
just asking where are you putting liability?
I would, to ensure safety, compatibility with local conditions. I don't know, I'll have to wordsmith it a little bit, but
Somewhere in
I'll
there.
find a way to work
Okay.
that in. English grammarian on the fly,
Okay.
along with the legal opinion.
Okay, did you get somebody for the second? We had a lot of people.
Many.
Okay.
Oh, well, thank you. I didn't say a word, but I'll take it.
But you're okay with that, huh?
Fine.
All right.
Yes.
We had a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we'll move on to the alternate 19 US 19 corridor, excuse me.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I alluded to this earlier, and this is, we've been very pleased with the work that the department and its consultants have done on this project. They've worked well with us. So I want to thank Brian and his team for that, especially. So, take it away.
Good afternoon. My name's Brian Schroyer. I'm with the Florida Department of Transportation Planning and Environmental Office. Today we're going to present, I hear feedback, sorry. Present some information on the Alt 19 corridor study that's been going on for the past 2 years. This is a study that looked at Alt 19 from Park Street north and the south to Bel Air, and then the second corridor section was from Bel Air up to Pasco County line. We've done a lot of public outreach, created a lot of meetings with groups that we had that gave us a lot of feedback on the conditions and what they want to see out there. So have my consultants here that will provide some information of our processes, what we've found out, and some of the alternatives that we're going to bring forward. So I'll let you get started with them.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chris Piazza, I'm with RK&K. I am the project manager, the consultant project manager over the southern segment that's going from Park Street north to Bel Air. As Brian was saying, we've been working on this job for a little over 2 years now. We've had a lot of interaction with local partners, a lot of good interaction with them as Whit was relaying to us too. So you can see here's our list of our local partners. It comprises of a lot of the city representatives, also PSTA, T-BARTA, and also the county as well. So just briefly what we're going to be going over today. Project overview, what we're looking at from a standpoint of the area that we looked at, some context classification that Matt's going to go into, and generally what we were looking at throughout the corridor. Our public outreach, how we've reached out to our local partners and their constituents as well, and the data that we've collected. One of the things that over the last 2 years we've collected over 1,000 comments along the project, so we've gotten a lot of information from our constituents along the job. And the corridor vision is something that we've worked on over the past couple of years, and we're tightening it up as we go through this process, and we're finalizing that here after these meetings and wrapping the project up. Our proposed concepts, we also had some workshops later on last year that we went over with the public and our project advisory group so that you could see what we're proposing within both projects. And next steps, Matt will go over that as far as how we're going to close this project out and what we'll bring back to our local partners so that they can see what the potential vision is moving forward as far as design and anything that could be implemented as part of these two projects. So as Brian was saying, the project was broken up into two studies. Corridor Study 1 was from Park Street North to Bel Air, and Corridor Study 2, which Matt will come up and discuss about later, was from the Bel Air Road to the Pinellas Pasco County line. So overall, we're looking at around 29 miles worth of roadway that we were evaluating. So preliminary purpose and need. Why were we doing this project? I know there's a lot of need for long-term solutions, but however, those long-term solutions may not fit with the character of the roadway or the area that we were working in. So we wanted to look at both long-term and short-term solutions to bring to the table, specifically developing those long-term corridor visions that defines what we call goals and objectives for moving the projects forward. And also how we can integrate land use and transportation. And that's why we were working with Fort Pinellas and also our local partners. We also were utilizing the new Complete Streets guidelines that were part of the FDOT's design manual update. That was part of 2018 in January. And looking at the context classification and making sure our improvements met the needs of the local needs, excuse me. So again, talking about our public and stakeholder outreach, we developed a project website. This is where all of our information to date can be found. Anybody can go out there and see the concepts we've presented, any of the newsletters we've sent out, any of the project advisory group meetings that we held, anything that we've shown there to and not only our local partners as well, but everything's on that website. It's a one-stop shop for any of the information we've used. We also did an online user survey at the beginning of the job. This helped us kind of set the roadmap for what we were going to do as part of this project. This gave us a lot of feedback from not only the public, but also our local partners as well, to see what they actually wanted to vision for the project and how we could achieve that through this process. We also held visioning charrettes, which again went in line with establishing the vision for the project and how we were going to look at alternatives along the corridor. We also formed that PAG, the Project Advisory Group, which is people from our local partners. They joined in on that to help us throughout the project. And we also incorporated what's called the wiki mapping tool. This was an interactive geo-reference tool that we could get real-time data along the project. At any point, we can go out and see who was providing comments, where those issues were. If, say, City of Largo had something in their comp plan they wanted to see as part of the project get incorporated, they could have gone on there and incorporated that in, we could have seen it. So we were getting a lot of real-time data along the project. And then, of course, we had those stakeholder and public meetings throughout the job, and we also provided newsletters and postcards to keep people aware of what we were doing throughout these last 2 years. So again, comments reviewed to date, like I said, we got 1,000 comments over the past 2 years, and mainly we were looking at bike ped safety and amenities were top of the list for everybody's needs. So that's kind of where we tried to focus our efforts within this project, not only looking at capacity needs, but level of service needs along the corridor, but also how we enhance safety throughout the corridor as well. Matt?
In addition to an extensive public involvement program, the project team also conducted a lot of engineering environmental analysis. We've prepared an existing conditions report, traffic analysis, a safety report, a drainage report, environmental analysis, and also nodal planning analysis. Nodal planning analysis, the ability to redevelop certain locations along the corridor. All this information is eventually going to be wrapped up in a final report called the Corridor Alternative Strategies Report. This report will be made available to the public through our website. A key component of the study was to develop a vision for the corridor. And right here we show the 5 guiding principles that were developed as part of the vision. The first being matching the character. We want to make sure that the improvements that we come up with match the context of the local area. We want to increase safety, not just safety for vehicle users, but also for pedestrians and bicycles. And we want to balance the user's needs. We want to make sure that the improvements serve both motorized and non-motorized modes. We want to enhance the networks. We want to make sure that we can provide connections to Alt-19. We also want to celebrate the unique assets of Alt-19. There are several small communities along Alt-19, and they're all very special. So how do we go about doing this? The department has developed a context classification system. This is a system that helps to integrate land use and transportation. It defines the built environment. And essentially, based on the context and the surrounding area, we're able to define the design criteria, how we build the roadways. So for example, if you're in an urban area, what a high priority would be sidewalks, bicycle lanes, lower speeds, as opposed to a rural area where the possibility that speeds will be higher and its main purpose is to carry vehicles at a faster rate. So we define the context classifications of the Alt-19 corridor, starting from the south. It's about 35% general urban and 65% suburban. If we go north, the northern section, we have about 7% urban center in downtown Clearwater. We have about 50% general urban, so that's the majority of the northern corridor is general urban. We have about 35% suburban, and the remaining northern portion, a rural area just south of the county line. So where are we at? This study started about 2 years ago, and these are the different steps that have been conducted in the study. So right now, we're preparing the final documentation, and like I mentioned, the alternative corridor strategy report that summarizes everything is going to be made available to the public for comment. So next we'll be talking about some of the alternatives, and we're just going to be hitting the highlights. When we had our alternative corridor workshop back in September, we had these large aerial plots showing all the different improvements along the 30-mile corridor, but we're just going to show the highlights today. So how did we come up with the alternatives? We had a vision plan, we had a traffic study, a safety report documenting all the safety deficiencies, as well as the stakeholder input. So all this information was pulled together to come up with transportation concepts. So Chris will talk about the southern segment.
So looking at balancing those user needs, I think as part of our southern segment, we had a little bit of a harder time because that's one of the most built out portions of alternate US 19. It's more so the business area, the commercial area as well, and then you have some mixed residential through there. So what we tried to look at mainly was some turn lane improvements, better access management. Again, we have some opportunities on the northern end of our corridor to look at some lane repurposing, so it allowed us to look at some roundabouts, and also the addition of bike lanes, which there aren't currently right now on US 19. And also to making sure we evaluated the pedestrian crosswalks and also looked at any pedestrian features that need to be updated throughout the corridor. So looking at some of those intersection turn lane improvements, you can start at the southern end of the project, working your way north. Park Street North, we evaluated again, looking at some major intersection needs there, but we looked at the critical movements and what those critical movements were and tried to apply additional turn lanes or any type of receiving lanes that we could in order to try to reduce the delays at these intersections. We didn't want to throw in interchanges or grade separation type alternatives. We were looking at trying to see what we could do with the least amount of impact and provide some level of service upgrade within these intersections. So Park Street North, 100th Way, Park Boulevard, 102nd Avenue, Lark Drive, Ulmerton Road, and Bay Drive. So Park Street North to 95th Street, this is the portion where we have the bridge over Long Bayou. That's one of the choke points along our project. We looked at increasing some capacity through here to make sure we had 6 lanes consistent throughout our corridor. So along here, we looked at widening the structures in order to accommodate that. So we eliminated that choke point throughout that portion. So talking about our repurposing of lanes, this is one of our major highlights along the southern portion of the project. Within Rosary Road up to Court Street, we had currently 6 lanes. What we wanted to look at was reducing that down to 4 lanes. We have the capacity in order to do that based on our traffic analysis at this time, and incorporate the 7-foot buffered bike lanes and also accommodate sidewalks at the back of curb for the pedestrians. That allowed us to also look at going into the northern corridor project from Chestnut to Marshall Street, where we had that additional capacity that we could reduce the lanes and repurpose those as well. So going from 4 lanes down to 2 and adding in some access management treatments as well, and incorporating in those buffered bike lanes and the sidewalks. So what that did for us throughout those 2 sections was allowed us to go in and look at roundabouts and see if they were feasible. We did an initial analysis of that, and as you can see here at Jasper and at Wyatt, we were able to incorporate 2 roundabouts there as part of the Southern Corridors process, and that also went into the Northern Corridor as well, where they were able to evaluate roundabouts as part of their segment too. Matt?
All right, so going north along the corridor, we're north of downtown Clearwater, and the portion of Alt 19 that goes through Edgewater Drive is a very scenic location. It's 2-lane undivided. What we've heard from the community is that the speeds out there are pretty high. One of the things we notice is that the northbound lane is 15 feet wide. For some reason, it's much wider in the northbound direction than in the southbound direction. So one of the recommendations that we're proposing is to reduce the northbound lane to 11 feet so that it would be the same width as the southbound direction as well. We're also proposing a wide sidewalk on the west side, located closest to the water, and a sidewalk on the east side as well.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Chairman? On the proposed Sunset Point, you don't have the width of the sidewalk next to the water? Would that be a combined bicycle and pedestrian path?
It would be. It would be 10 feet or more.
10 feet or more?
Yes.
Wow.
That is so needed.
Yeah, but it's going to be really, are you going to do it the curved like it is today?
There may be an option to do that or adjacent to the roadway.
Where are you? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Edgewater.
Edgewater.
Oh.
I mean, you're right, it is needed. It is needed.
I walk there every Monday evening, and I get run over by bicyclists all the time. Because there's not enough width.
Right.
So, hooray.
Right. What we've also heard from the community is that there's a need for mid-block crosswalks to walk to the other side, especially during sunset where it's very beautiful. So there's actually 5 locations along the corridor where we're proposing mid-block crosswalks. This is north of Sediva, south of Union, south of Orangewood, south of Florida, and lastly in front of the Fenway Hotel. These are the 5 locations. In addition to typical section changes, we're also looking at some of the bridges where they do not provide pedestrian accommodations. And this is an example of the Anclote River Bridge up in Tarpon Springs. And essentially today, there's no pedestrian accommodations in the northbound direction. So we're proposed widening of the bridge to include upgraded traffic railings on the outside, bicycle lane in both the northbound and southbound directions, as well as sidewalks in both the northbound and southbound directions. Next, we'll talk about the Dunedin area, and one of the locations where they experience a lot of traffic congestion is downtown Dunedin. You have 2 intersections that are closely spaced next to each other. You have Marina and you have Main Street. They're very close spaced, and we've come up with 2 alternatives to try to resolve some of the traffic congestion at this location. The first alternative is a roundabout alternative. Its intent is to move traffic continuously. The only time that the traffic would stop is when there are pedestrians that would activate a signal pedestrian crossing. We propose that this signal pedestrian crossing would have a delay so that pedestrians won't be hitting it all the time and stopping the roundabout. But the roundabout has been given the name as a dog bone roundabout because what we're doing is we're combining 2 roundabouts into one, and it looks like a dog bone. The second alternative is to realign Marina so that it's more efficient for the movement on US Alt 19, and also to provide a traffic signal. And these 2 traffic signals would be coordinated to increase efficiency of traffic through both of the intersections. How we evaluate these alternatives is we have an evaluation matrix, and you can see that we have different evaluation measures like intersection delay, the number of conflict points, pedestrian bicycle accommodations, right-of-way impacts, as well as the cost for construction. And as you can see, by the design year 2040, the no-build alternative would not provide acceptable levels of service. So really, we need to look to what are some of the improvements to improve these intersections. So the next intersection is also in Dunedin, and it's in Curlew Road in Alt 19. This is a very important intersection. It provides access to the Dunedin Causeway as well as Honeymoon Island. Honeymoon Island has been given the distinction as the most visited state park in Florida. So a tremendous amount of people visit that park. During spring break and periods of the summer, there's a tremendous amount of congestion at this intersection. So we've looked at several ways to improve the intersection. The first alternative is called the add lanes alternative. And essentially what we're doing is that we have a single lane that approaches the intersection. Then as you get closer to the intersection, it opens up to 2. So you'll have 2 northbound and southbound lanes through the intersection, and once you go past the intersection, it'll emerge back into 1 lane. The advantage of this alternative increases the throughput capacity of the intersection. You're able to process more vehicles. The negative is that it increases the distance for pedestrians to cross the intersection, and that's one of the concerns that we've heard from the locals. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to think outside the box. What are some innovative intersections that have been used throughout the United States that have solved some of the congestion problems? So some of these alternatives I will discuss, and we actually have a video to show you, are creative alternatives that are being used in other parts of the United States. The first alternative is called the displaced left turn alternative. And essentially what it is that, for example, if you're coming from Dunedin Causeway, approaching the intersection from the west, before you get to the main intersection, what you're going to do is you're going to have a traffic signal, and you're going to cross over to the other side of the road. So once you get to the main intersection, you have the ability to make a left turn at the same time as the through movements are going. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but we have a video here that can show you what it's like.
One innovative intersection design, the displaced left turn intersection, implements unopposed left turns at intersections by crossing traffic over to the other side of the road in advance. At many intersections, the critical question is how to address left turns. How they are treated has an impact on the efficiency of the intersection and can reduce a crash type that tends to be quite severe. The displaced left turn design, also known as the continuous flow intersection or CFI, moves the left turn crossover upstream. Drivers cross over to the left side of the road into an exclusive left turn lane. As they enter the primary intersection, the left turns proceed unopposed. Compared to a conventional intersection, conflicts are fewer at a DLT, an important step to improving intersection safety. Conflict points are reduced from 32 for a conventional intersection to 28 for a full DLT. Additionally, the DLT design allows left-turning traffic to move simultaneously with through traffic, resulting in significant operational benefits. Studies show this increases capacity as much as 70%.
The big, outstanding benefit is capacity.
Signs and pavement markings inform and guide drivers as they approach a displaced left-turn intersection. Traffic signals are easily synchronized, resulting in improved efficiency. Pedestrian crossings at a displaced left-turn intersection are similar to a conventional intersection. Pedestrian signals are provided, ensuring adequate crossing opportunity and time. An added benefit is the raised channelization needed to separate traffic. These islands can also serve as a refuge for pedestrians, resulting in shorter, simpler crossing stages.
All right. So as you can see, this is an alternative that's very different from our conventional intersections. One of the things that, if you haven't experienced already, is the I-75 University Parkway interchange down in Sarasota. And it has a very similar concept where as you approach the interchange, you're shifting over to the left-hand side. So really, it's very similar. So the next alternative is a continuous flow intersection. And essentially, it's very similar to the previous alternative where the displaced left is on one approach. The continuous flow is the displaced left is both on the east-west and the north-south approaches. So basically, all approaches have a displacement. The last alternative is the median U-turn alternative. It's very synonymous with the Michigan U-turn. So with this alternative, traffic would, for example, on Alt 19, go past the intersection and make a U-turn, and then followed by that U-turn, make a right turn instead of the left. So once again, we have a video for this alternative.
The median U-turn treatment involves the elimination of the direct left turns at signal-controlled intersections from major and/or minor approaches. To make a left at a median U-turn, the driver passes through the main intersection and proceeds to a median opening, where the driver makes a U-turn followed by a right turn. Drivers on the minor road who want to turn left onto the major road must first turn right at the signal-controlled intersection and then execute a U-turn at the downstream median opening and proceed back through the signalized intersection. Guide signs are provided and inform motorists as they approach the intersection. The median U-turns themselves may or may not be signalized.
The Michigan left treatment is one of our safest roadway design next to the freeway. This design reduces crashes by decreasing the conflicts and also alleviate congestion.
Relocating the left turn reduces the number and complexity of conflicts between traffic and pedestrians and bicyclists, especially at the far side of the turn. Instead of being used for left turn lanes, the median space at the intersection between opposing directions of traffic can instead be designed as a pedestrian refuge area, allowing people to cross the intersection in two shorter, safer stages.
The highest risk issue for pedestrians is the drivers in the left turning vehicles. But when they're only dealing with the right turning vehicles in front of them, it tends to be easier for the pedestrians and there's more visibility for the pedestrians as they're crossing the roadway.
The median U-turn can reduce the number of signal phases at the intersections, in some cases by as much as half, resulting in significantly improved efficiency. Studies have shown a 20 to 50% increase in capacity.
Well, we can improve capacity so traffic is more free flow through the area. We're only operating a 2-phase signal as compared to an 8-phase where you have direct left turns at it. The crossover signal will go green in advance of the main intersection so that the platoon is gathered, and then the main intersection will go green so that everybody's together, all the vehicles are together as they drive through the corridor. This provides us with better progression. We get more capacity out of the intersection.
By reducing the number of conflict points, the median U-turns result in safer intersections and roadways as compared to conventional signalized intersections.
Things that we've heard from some of our prior meetings is the concern for pedestrian and bicycle movements with the Pinellas Trail being so close to the intersection. With the innovative alternatives that we've talked about today, the pedestrians and bicycles on Pinellas Trail would actually be in the intersection, and there'll be signalized movements making them safer as opposed to its separate locations today.
Hold on one second, please.
Sure.
Mayor Bujalski.
So just a quick question. When you looked at Curlew, you know, there are other things to consider. One of the things that causes big backup to Curlew is the entryway of Honeymoon Island. We have begged, borrowed, stealed, whatever we could do to try to get the state to change that entrance format or to improve that entrance format to keep the traffic from backing up. And it does go all the way to County Road 1. We're still working with them, but I don't know that that was considered here. The other thing is the age of people using this intersection. The people that live out on the causeway,
Are old.
most people they're old. I mean, old. No offense to anybody that's living on the causeway.
Say it a little different.
And then, well,
I'm kidding.
you have to. It needs some.
They're elderly. Yes.
They're elderly. And then the other thing, and again, I know this is probably a cost factor, and you've got some, let's call them creative thought processes here. But what the pedestrian use in that intersection is probably used more than it is in our downtown. I mean, it is an incredible pedestrian, bike, walking, scooter, anything you can have. So was there any discussion to lifting those people off the ground and doing a bridge over there? And I'm not saying it's the right idea. I know it's expensive. But when you're talking about doing alternatives because of all the pedestrian safety and conflicts, I'd just like to know that these other things were considered to make to start making these decisions. And can they be considered if they weren't?
Absolutely. the things that you just talked about can definitely be considered within the study. To talk about the last item, that's something that we've heard in our prior meetings is the need for an overpass for the Pinellas Trail for its connection on the east side. The one thing to note is that there is a pedestrian overpass crossing.
right up the street.
Yeah, just north of the intersection.
I know, and I get it,
Yeah.
because it's Alt 19, there's a lot of traffic, but that intersection, you've got pedestrian and bikes coming from 4 different ways, and the trail is right there.
Both trails.
Both trails, yeah, but the trail coming off the causeway, and then the Pinellas, that's a spur, and then the regular trail. So I just think it might be beneficial to consider these other things while you're doing this.
Right, and they're a part of it too. It's just, we have to deal with the congestion at the intersection, and what we can do with dealing with the traffic, how do we accommodate the bikes and peds through there at the ground level? Throwing the flyover for pedestrians can be with, excuse me, with any configuration we end up with at the intersection. So along with it, we can throw the overpass in there for them. So it's not forgotten, it's just part of it. And we're going through the processes of evaluating what is the best fit out there and bringing them forward for Pinellas and you guys to assist us with that too.
And again, we've got another agency, Parks, State Parks, and, and Pinellas County government, because the Causeway Road is technically theirs, and us, and you guys looking at an intersection that a lot of congestion going east-west is caused by the entryway of Honeymoon Island. It is.
It's not much of a queue to get in, so they use the causeway for the queue, but the causeway itself is busy.
Oh, it
too,
is. It's
up and back.
equally, if not more busy, but there's so many places to access the causeway and get out of the traffic.
in terms of slowing
So I just want to say we need to all kind of work together and look at that in a holistic way to determine what's best, not just the typical lane configuration is what I'm saying. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we also have an evaluation matrix for Curlew, and it shows the different options that we've discussed today and how they operate, as well as the construction and right-of-way impacts with each of the alternatives. As you can see in the design year 2040, that the no-build alternative would provide failing levels of service, while the other alternatives would reduce the delay dramatically. Yes.
I'm sorry, on the, there was a comment made by somebody on the screen that talked about 8 sequences going down to 2 sequences for the lights. So I was trying to figure out, when you do that U-turn, you're going to be U-turning onto an area that's really backed up. So how's it going to continuously flow? But with just the 2 cycles, you're moving much more frequently, I guess, in that north-south and then east-west.
Yeah, so you have a traffic signal at the main intersection today, and then upstream or downstream of the main intersection, you will also have traffic signals. The 2 signals will operate in unison, so that when you're making the U-turn, as they showed in the video, that once you approach the main intersection, you'll get green at the main intersection. So they'll be coordinated, the traffic signals.
I was thinking of the U-turn one.
Yes, and exactly. So the U-turn, it's 2-phase. So it'll be the U-turn going 1 phase, and then it'll be the southbound through as a 2nd phase. So it's a very efficient traffic signal. You don't have a lot of movements going on.
There's only 1 signal, though, in that case.
That's 1 signal, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. In the northbound direction, it'll be moving free, at least in the median U-turn alternative.
3 times better than 70.
Okay, in addition to the intersection alternatives, we had a series of roadway segment alternatives, and how we compared the benefits of those alternatives. We also had an evaluation matrix for the roadway segments. We wanted to compare the evaluation criteria to the guiding principles of the study. So this is an example of the matrix that we had shown at the alternatives workshop back in September. So I'd like to finish up by talking about what the next steps are. Right now, we're finalizing the improvements, and we're developing a menu list of short-term and long-term improvements that will be provided to FDOT as well as Forward Pinellas. FDOT will be working with Ford Pinellas to determine what priorities are, which improvements that they would like to see move forward, which improvements can be put off for a longer period of time. Right now, the department has design for the improvements in 2023. And the alternative corridor strategies report, that will be the main document that's summarizing the improvements. And with that, if there's questions.
Yes, Commissioner Sofer.
On your displaced left alternative, on the study that on the obviously that was a real location that you were showing. What is the wrong way driver accident rate in that study?
I don't know if you looked at that. I don't have that offhand, but most of how the configuration works is, because I've looked at that too, wondering, and I just haven't dug into the data behind it, but where there'd be opportunity for going the wrong way, more likely there's going to be cars already sitting, waiting at the stop light. So there's limited opportunity to actually go the wrong way if there's cars there. And the way the marking is, it really directs them, and the signage too. It's not much more different than what's out there now for the roadways when people have opportunities to make the wrong way. I mean, they're ignoring the signs and stuff as it is anyways, but as far as real data, I'll have to dig that back up.
You didn't give me a really warm, fuzzy feeling on that one.
Well,
but I mean,
yeah.
it's just, I mean, we have, obviously in the state of Florida, have a problem with that.
Right.
So definitely looking at that example right there, I think we're all looking at.
Right. Well, North Carolina is a leader in the U.S. for a lot of these innovative intersections. The Michigan U-turn, they have over 300 locations where they have those. The DDIs, the Divergent Diamond, they have at least a dozen of those. These displaced left turns, they have a lot of those too, but as far as the crash data or wrong way data, I really have to look that up. But they are safe since they are being used widely across the U.S. Some of those locations were in Utah, and there's a series of them along the highway, and they're just, each intersection has a displaced left, and they're all operating efficiently, and I don't think they have as much of a concern with the wrong way driving.
And how long has that particular intersection been in effect? Because obviously education's really important when you redesign, and I think that's why we struggle with a roundabout concept. Whereas if you go to, say, Australia, they don't have stop signs at all. Everything is a roundabout. But for some reason, we kind of struggle with the concept of a roundabout here.
Yeah, I'm not sure the age of the one in Utah, but it's more recently, like in the last 5 years, I believe. But with Australia too, you mentioned them. I discuss as much as I can with the time frame difference with people in Australia about what they're doing. I'm looking at some of their stuff, and we're coordinating back and forth on ideas of how they're doing things. Because I'm trying to bring some innovative ideas to address issues that we continually have out here too. So.
Well, I mean, and they do have unique ideas as far as, and like I said, the roundabout concept works really well there. If you've ever seen it, it's amazing. They flow with the traffic. Right. They also have tags to identify young drivers, which I think is a great idea too. So you know that this is a young driver, this is, somebody that's new on the road, and you pay attention to that, just like somebody that's learning to drive. And they have very unique ideas for the road that we should take note of.
Mr. Seal?
I concur. Been to New Zealand and Australia, and it does work, but it's because that is their total road treatment. It's the same everywhere you go.
It's consistent.
The problem here, I think, also, besides the elderly, are our tourists. And, throwing new or, trying to follow marked paths to get to, through one intersection after another. I really appreciate the creative ideas. I just want to make sure that it would be there would be continuity and there would be easy to navigate for our tourists, because that's crucial.
Right.
I did go to 275 and University Parkway on purpose to try it out, and I think it works well there because it's a big interchange.
Right.
I mean, and these that we're looking at are a lot smaller, so I think they have more potential for conflict than the big one at University.
Yes.
So.
And we'll be getting one of those up in our area, at least Pasco area, 75 and State Route 56. They're going to be building a DDI there too.
So it's planned for where, 75?
75 and State Route 56.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So that'll be another one, but yeah, these innovative intersections, they're concepts, we're evaluating them, we're bringing them forward now. We're listening to the concerns and we're going to investigate further. And as we start, like we said, we have a design scheduled and funded for fiscal year 2023. We're trying until that point to figure out what we are going to move forward into a design based on what we have in the study. So we'll be talking with Fort Pinellas and the communities too about things they would like to see and what we can do to address it. And these are just concepts that we have. So.
Right, and as one who voted for the Clearwater Beach roundabout before it was ever constructed, I've received quite a bit of criticism over the years for that. So I have a little bit of hesitation also with roundabouts, especially when they're close together.
Yeah, me
where
too.
you're looking at Dunedin.
Me too.
Right at
In
Main
both,
Street
yeah.
and Edgewater.
Gonna work.
But that being said, that needs to also, if it went to a signalized intersection, that would be a whole lot safer than it is now.
Yeah, and for pedestrians.
And for pedestrians, so.
Safer.
Sorry, we're not engineers and we can only offer, what we experience personally. So
Right.
I respect that you all have the expertise versus me, but.
Well, we're listening too. So.
Yeah, well, I think some of the comments are on target. I think we're going to have to try. We always talk about pilot projects, but we need to find a location and try a roundabout. I mean, I almost think that, the one in Clearwater Beach has just created this kind of mental block for all of us that, those are 2 lanes. They have like 6 entry points around that roundabout. It's a little different when you have 1 lane coming in from directions and you have just 4 entry points. It's a little different. I think it was somewhere along the lines. I mean, we're not going to put 10 in at once,
Right.
but we need to try one someplace that makes a lot of sense.
Right, and we're
uh,
trying to find that fit. And
yeah.
like I said, these are
But
ideas, and if they fit,
But I
they
sure would
fit.
hate to wait till 2023 to get the first one in to start looking. I just think we need to move this a little bit quicker.
Well, as we work on evaluating these alternatives and trying to get things prioritized, if there's opportunities to get different priorities and advance things, I'm sure everybody would be fine with that too.
But finding that, I like the idea of the U-turn or the left turn, or the, what do you call it, the
Medium.
continuous
Medium
left.
U-turn.
Medium
or-
U-turn.
Yeah, that was
Medium
interesting.
U-turn and the continuous. I mean, I think they've got real possibilities, but again, we got to find a place to try it so that people can get comfortable with it. And then maybe unveil other ones. But
Right, thanks.
anyway, Commissioner, go ahead. Albritton, go ahead.
Well, we've got a lot of roundabouts in Clearwater, and they seem to work, with single-lane roundabouts work very well. The beach roundabout works really good, except the point where the inside lane crosses the outside lane. And if that could be fixed, that would be a great roundabout. So I've seen smaller ones like 1-lane roundabouts, they seem to work very well.
Yeah, it really keeps the traffic moving.
Yeah.
Commissioner Welch, did you have something?
Most of my comments have been said. I want to agree with Commissioner Sofer's
The one in Greenwood works
comments on identifying restricted drivers. I talked to a visitor from Europe, and I'm also teaching my 16-year-old to drive.
Good luck.
And so it would be great if the outside world knows that this person is learning to drive, back off a little, don't expect them to be as, like an experienced driver. And I didn't know they had that until I had that conversation.
They have placards, and it's
Right.
different levels as to like a beginning driver, and they've been driving for a year. And
I thought it was a great idea. when
these
they-
kids get excited about getting the different color
And
placards.
it's awareness for people around them.
And they're not allowed to drive after a certain time at night as well, and it's identified as that.
So I concur with you on that. Most of what I was thinking about the roundabouts has been said. I think on slide 26, if Pete's back there and can bring that up. But some of these, Commissioner Eggers, as you were speaking, if I'm looking at Wyatt Street, that's actually a 4-lane. And you've got a green outline. I just wanted to ask, is that the pedestrian? I guess we can't bring it up.
Well, this is 26 that's up. I'm not sure.
We're not seeing it.
Yeah, we don't see it.
It's coming. It's coming.
So the one that shows the two roundabouts, it's the next slide, I think.
26. No,
No, that's back. It's back
backwards.
earlier.
It's quite a ways back.
It says Largo and Clearwater repurposed
There you
lanes
go.
at the
Yeah.
top, that one. And I know you can't zoom in, but faintly you can see that in light green, are those the pedestrian walkways at each roundabout?
Yeah, so we have those are sidewalk, and then the crosswalks there that we try to differentiate those, so you could see that. And then the green is, of course, the green space. That would be the median separator there. And
There's several levels of green on your.
Yeah,
I'm
it's-
talking about
it's
the one
hard-
that
it's hard to
actually
tell.
crosses the road, it looks like a pedestrian.
That's a pedestrian crosswalk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Outside the circle.
So it's just, there's no signal there, obviously.
There's no signal.
Are
There's
any
no
of these, you got seven roundabouts, do any of those replace a traffic signal?
These are replacing traffic signals that are currently
Existing.
there today, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
In
The only one that
this
it-
case.
In this case,
Yeah.
correct. The only one that it doesn't replace along that section between Jasper going into the northern corridor, which was Marshall, where that reduction ended, was Bel Air. Bel Air had to remain a signalized intersection in order for the series of roundabouts to work
Okay, and
from
so,
a traffic operations standpoint.
so you're estimating that just because of timing, pedestrians
Cor-
will be able to cross that?
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Commissioner Pajowski.
Just two quick things. One, with the roundabouts close to downtown Dunedin, one of the big things we're worried about, and you don't have to bring it up, but you can see, as you were just questioning, Commissioner Welch, where the people cross by the roundabout. So in downtown Dunedin, it's a single lane, not a double lane like this, but you have people, we've purposely created our development pattern so people come from downtown to the marina area in Edgewater Park. It's very connected now. There are a ton of people who move through this intersection. What's going to happen now, instead of walking to the corner like a normal person would in a very walkable downtown, by the way, voted the most walkable community in some magazine, I don't remember which, but instead of just walking to the corner, you now have to walk, I don't know if it's 13, 15 feet in a weird direction to get across. And coming off of a downtown who's built to go straight, I really fear people will not walk that number of feet away to cross. I think they will try and cross right over the roundabout. I see people do crazy things at that intersection today. I think if we ask, I just think it's not at least at that one main intersection, I don't see it happening. But that, I really wanted to just ask, you were talking about next steps and the preferred alternatives and design. At what point do decisions get made, and how are we as a board, and how are we as the different cities involved in that decision-making process? Because obviously you've got a couple options here for different things.
Well, as you said, the documents are being put together now. The department will review those we'll take our fatal flaw look at them and see if there's issues that we can help with each of the concepts. And then we'll give them out back to Fort Pinellas and get them to the cities and everybody to make their comments also. And then we'll be picking those alternatives and working through to get them towards design. So there'll be tweaking of certain things, like there's issues with everything that is a concept until we get to more details. Right now we're such a higher level of addressing just the basic congestion, the safety issues, and when we get down, we're going to be looking at how wide the lanes should be, you know, where exactly should the crosswalks be, you know, a lot of lighting issues and stuff. So we got years, like I said, it's not until 2023, but we'll have this process to get everybody's comments on it.
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Director, I would like to at least ask on behalf of this board for that Curlew intersection, for the idea of if Honeymoon Island had a better entrance, you don't have to figure out what that is, but if that traffic and backup was reduced, how would it affect it, as well as a pedestrian overpass of some kind be considered?
Okay.
For this intersection, whether it's at the trail crossing Curlew, I don't know what the right thing to do. But if those things were considered, what then would you be doing with the intersection?
Right.
Is what I'm
I
trying to
understand.
say.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I understand.
Anything else? I know you didn't finish going all the way to the north, but it's a little lighter treatments going north.
Right. Yeah, it gets a
but we're
little easier to deal with stuff. There's not many issues. These are the major points that we want to address. But the rest of the corridor has other treatments.
Just so folks that are watching, there's a lot of treatments going north.
Right.
A roundabout in downtown Palm Harbor, for instance, and that kind of thing. So there's more treatments. You haven't been left out.
No.
But
replacement of the Anclote River Bridge,
the
things like
Anclote
that.
River Bridge. There's quite a bit going on. So.
Yeah, new crosswalk north of Tarpus.
You did not name the roundabout
No,
correctly.
we're not. We're not.
It's the Eggers roundabout.
No. Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I can get through the director's report real briefly. I just want to lay out, I want to thank everybody for participating in the transit funding workshop or transportation funding workshop we had on January 18th. I've been having meetings with the county administrator and with PSTA CEO Brad Miller. And we are planning to have another staff level workshop where we look at a wide range of transportation funding options that the county administrator has directed his staff to look at. In the meantime, we are working with PSTA to look at transit investment strategies that focus on workforce development and access to jobs. And we will be prioritizing some service corridor improvements based on that for consideration. And then my understanding is that the Board of County Commissioners is looking at a funding workshop later in the spring. And so we'll continue to kind of guide and facilitate that process as best we can. So again, I think there was a lot of good dialogue that guides us on that. On the next item, the spotlight update, I just want to highlight two things. The Department of Transportation has been a great partner, and we have been working with the city of town of Indian Shores on their sidewalk request in that section of Gulf Boulevard. And we're going to be meeting with the town and the department. They've looked at some numbers. They've looked at some options. They're going to be bringing back that information in a workshop with the town soon. And then last night we had a meeting with the city of Indian Rocks Beach where county staff presented some accommodations to Gulf Boulevard for better safety. And some of those are near-term solutions that can happen today on the county maintained section, and some of them are longer-term solutions that go with resurfacing. You know, it's the same issue that we had with West Bay Drive, where there's a perception that anything that's narrowing the width of the travel lane is going to be a problem for folks. So we're going to work through that. But in the meantime, I think there's some actionable short-term strategies that can be implemented in that area. So we're going to continue to work on those two items. For the US 19 corridor, I am anticipating about a month away that we'll have some information on the northern sections in terms of those interchanges and what other options may be feasible. And we are working very closely with the city of St. Petersburg and other stakeholders on the 34th Street South section
because pretty quickly, we're going to need to come up with a recommendation about how that gets addressed in the resurfacing. And the department has said they would prefer not to bring the curbs in when they do the resurfacing. And there is extra money that's been budgeted for sidewalks and other treatments. So we'll be looking at potentially a business access transit lane or bike lanes or some combination out there for repurposing, because we've done the feasibility study to determine that you don't need all 6 lanes of capacity on 34th Street South down to 54th Avenue.
To 54th Avenue from where?
About 26th Avenue South.
South, so the Skyway.
Yeah, Skyway Arena
Okay.
District.
All right.
So that'll be coming back before the board when we're ready and have those ducks in a row. And then finally, for the Gateway Master Plan, the next study management team meeting will be in May. We don't have a date yet, but it'll happen in early May. We're working through some of the land use and transportation recommendations, and we'll have a presentation probably at our May meeting on that. And that'll feed our long-range plan as well. And some of those connections will include overpass, underpass on 275 and 126th Avenue and other projects that have been talked about for a while, but there may be some new ones as well. We're looking at affordable housing and density in the appropriate places as well in that area. I don't know that I need to cover a whole lot of things for the MPOAC meeting, but I do want to mention the TMA Leadership Group meeting that met on Friday. The summary is going to be going out this week, but I think the main takeaway was that the TMA Leadership Group representatives very strongly affirmed the role of the 3-county TMA Leadership Group to meet on a regular basis. There was a suggestion from one of the other counties that we shift to an emphasis on the Chairs Coordinating Committee, which is the 8-county region. And the TMA Leadership Group all generally preferred keeping that focus on the core 3 MPOs for one urbanized area. We're happy with that. We think that's a workable solution. We do think it can be incorporated into the interlocal agreement that already exists for the CCC, so that we more formalize that mechanism. Maybe it's a subcommittee of the CCC. That's something we talked about, but that was an important action. And then otherwise, we previewed our regional priority lists, and they'll be taking action on that at the April meeting. And we'll bring that to you all as well for preview at the March meeting. So.
Yeah, I was glad to see the representation from the Hillsborough County being a little bit more measured. The two of the folks were very thoughtful in their deliberation. I thought that were at least keeping this TMA group together. So I was really glad to hear that. I think it was important. Did you have anything that came to mind, Councilman?
Good job.
No, everything you and Whit have said just kind of hits it on the head.
I thought it was a productive dialogue. So the next meeting will be at PSTA in April. I don't have the date. Chelsea, do you remember? No, but it'll be in April. It'll be in our county. And the way it's working is where the host county is where the chair is. And that's the meeting we'll vote on regional priorities. I'm done. I'm all finished.
Anything else anybody would like to bring up? I did see a little note here that said that in addition to the one opening of the CAC that we talked about earlier, that there is a couple of openings for the local coordinating board, one for public education and one for the citizens transportation disadvantaged. So if you know of anybody that might be interested in those 2 positions, let us know as well. And I guess that's all we've got.
That's it.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.